Good evening. Tonight, we're going to be doing dailies. It's going to be a daily stream. Just good old dailies. We've been doing a lot of Mark Tome farming recently, but on account of me being finished, we're doing something else. What we're doing differently, and you might be going, wait, why is he a fisher? Are we doing combat content? Yes, but I haven't rolled what we're going yet. So, the way this is going to work is that I have this, oops, I almost closed it. I have this little wheel here, and we will, before we do content, I'm going to spin the wheel, see which job we get, and, well, I'll be playing that job. And then I'll remove it from the wheel so that we don't, like, could you imagine? I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to be playing random jobs, and then I roll Sage 8 times. We're going to be rolling a random job. You can do the same, but we might run into a situation where, I mean, if we have a group composition that doesn't actually work, then we might have a problem. So you don't have to be rolling randomly too. But what I am going to do is I'm going to roll the job I'm playing first, so that, for example, if I roll DPS, then of course I know, well, I'm going to need probably a tank and a healer and another DPS, depending on what our group is going to be, right? We might get something completely absurd that still works. Remember, when we did all healers, we discovered that, well, 4 healers can easily do an expert roulette, and 4 healers can easily do a level 90 dungeon, and 4 healers can easily do a leveling roulette. 4 healers can easily do a 50, 60, 70, 80 roulette. In fact, 8 healers can easily do a trial roulette. So, depending on what you get, of course. But, point is, we might not need to have, like, the perfect setup for this to work. And the reason why it's pointing at Reaper now is just because I tested it a few times. I discovered that it's a little loud, so I've muted it. Right. With that said, hey Kitsuneko, hey Gazel, hey HK, Rust, Tristan, me who else, BSR, Mali, Gilano, Emir, Taimo. I hope you're all having a nice evening, or a good day, depending on where you are in the world. Should we just roll it? We're starting with Expert Roulette, of course. And hey Kosari, I hope you're doing well as well. Like, it had, like, loud noises playing as it was spinning, and it had, like, a big, like, fanfare and stuff, but I've just muted all of it. Apparently we're starting with Bard, which I have not played a lot recently, so that's going to be fun. Now that's gone from the list, and I'm going to be playing Bard. I'm going to go over here. Oh, Umi is here. Who would like to join for Expert Roulette? Come over to me. So we'll see how many we get. Worst case, we might have to make multiple groups. Hey Rosts, I hope you're doing well. It's going well. We're just about to start. Well, I'm going to invite those that came over first. We have 5 specifically. I actually did do a dungeon with both HK and Gazel earlier, so don't worry about it. I'll invite people. We'll try and have as much fun together as possible. So we might, like, mix things up to make sure that everyone gets to come along as well, right? Right, so do we have a situation where there's no one that can play DPS in this group? can't remember if there's anyone that is like, I can only play tank or I can only play healer, but I believe Gazel is like on that character's very only healer for this or that. Which is not a problem, it was more we had 2 tanks. It is what it is. Horst says, sitting for the last 4 hours in the duty finder. Oh, what have you been in the duty finder for? Right. Oh, we did a ready check. Seems everyone's ready. Oh. Not optimal. No, it's not optimal, this. That's fine. If you wanted to optimize like a dungeon, you wouldn't bring anything that has raid buffs. That's an entirely different story. Like, the reason for that, I've talked a little bit about this previously, but basically the reason why it is like that is because jobs with raid buffs are balanced around the fact that the raid buffs are spread on 8 players. So if you want to optimize something like a dungeon, don't know why you would want to do that, but you might want to do that, then you are in the position of, you know, you're wasting half of your raid buffs. But you just can't, like, if you're trying to optimize a random dungeon run, then you're very much in a hurry, aren't you? Speaking of optimizing, I have a feeling that Bard is going to be a nightmare to try and play decently well in a dungeon like this. It's also been a long time since I played Bard, so I might not be able to do the opener perfectly. Fortunately, by the time we reach the boss, some of my cooldowns are already ruined. So I can just quietly blame that. No, it's not because I'm bad, it's the game's fault. Take my word for it. HK says, are you using an MMO mouse? Yes. Extreme Trials from Heavensward. Yeah, that's going to be really hard to get through Duty Finder. Most players don't actually, like, they don't queue for extremes and the like. Through the, especially not the Duty Finder. The thing is that old extremes, you should use the party finder for and not queue for old extremes at all. Generally, players don't do extremes with the queue system in any situation. Like, you will not be able to beat an old extreme in one sitting. And generally speaking, the random, like the Duty Finder, is designed to optimize doing content that is designed for one sitting, and I just let my dots drop there. But it's the content that you do in the Duty Finder is mainly content that is made to be done in a single sitting, and old extremes are not that. And the simple reason for that is that old extremes are still very difficult. So you need to practice, you need to like look up guides and learn the fights, and that takes a lot of time. And most of your group probably doesn't realize that either, because the only other people that queue for old extremes in the Duty Finder are people that think that it's like, it's probably slightly harder than the hard version of content, right? And the difference is that the hard version of... I just let my dots drop again. Incredible. Look at me. Yeah, it's not it's not even remotely comparable in that regard. So I would recommend Rust, if you want to do the old, like the extreme trials of Heavensward, go in the party finder and make group. It's very important if you want to do it like synced, which means that you don't just do it unrestricted and bring a level 90 to insta-kill the boss. It's very important that you say that in your party finder group, because otherwise people will assume that that's what you're doing, because people generally don't do the old content synced otherwise. Good luck. And I'm sorry that it is like that. It's basically just that the game isn't the best about explaining this difference, so it can be easy to miss. Later in the game, you will also find that they don't, like in higher level content, they completely stop using the parentheses hard thing, because it's just confusing, right? It makes it feel like or sound like it's comparable even when it's not. Hashtag dot dropper. Hey Ali, I hope you're doing well. Rost says it was okay in AR. I think it's possible that it was okay. There's also a very high probability, based on what I know, that you were extremely lucky with the groups that you got. But yeah, it's true that the old Realm Reborn extremes are at a difficulty level where if you get people that are like pretty like understanding of the game mechanics, if you get enough mentors that land in your group, and I'll get to that, but if you get enough mentors in your group, there's a reasonable chance that they'll be able to like suss out how the fight is supposed to go so that it isn't a problem. The reason why I say enough mentors is because the only players that will actively queue for extremes for the most part in Final Fantasy XIV are sprouts that don't know that that's generally not how people do things, and mentors, because the mentor roulette, which is a special roulette mentors can unlock, is like an anything goes button, which means that often mentors will land in this content because no one else is queuing for it. Like, they're not actually queuing for it, it's just that, well, there was enough sprouts queuing for it, so now that's what you're doing. Like, obviously the mentor should still be, like, doing the content just the same, but that is how the groups usually fill. It's a combination of sprouts that have no idea what they're in for, and mentors that know exactly what they're in for. And might be very concerned because of that. But to be honest, what we really should be doing is that old extremes shouldn't be something you can queue for. Like, that is not a mistake on the Sprouts part. The problem is that it is queuable, so it's easy to misunderstand. Hey Zach, and hey Phil. My song dropped this time. It's incredible. It's like I'm like a flip-flop of a mechanic. I just forget one of the job mechanics every time. Let's hope that I actually know how to play Bard again when we reach the final boss. Wouldn't that be an incredible evolution? Harley says it is my understanding that in Japanese data centers they do just queue extremes via the duty finder. I've heard that too. And I'm pretty sure that that is correct. The reason why a lot of things in Final Fantasy XIV can be in a way where like there is an option that no one uses, or there is something that seems to be broken, but it's not getting changed. It isn't unusual that the reason why it is the way that it is because in the Japanese data center specifically, they're using the system in a very different way. Like, for example, I've heard that the housing shortage isn't a thing in the Japanese data centers at all, because, well, in the Japanese data center, you don't get a house just for the sake of getting a house. You get a house if you actually want to, like, have a house. Like, you might feel like get a house if you want to furnish it, but you don't just get it because it's there. Meanwhile, in the western part of, like, western data centers, it's very common for people to go, well, I mean, I don't have a house. And then just get a house for the sake of having a house. Which can cause this kind of shortage, where there isn't actually enough housing for everyone. I don't know how common it is with mechanics in Final Fantasy XIV that it is like that, but it is at least something that I've heard multiple times. For example, I say, I mean, we shouldn't have, like, difficult content like extremes in the duty finder, but that would mess with the Japanese player base because they use it perfectly fine. We say there's not enough housing. Meanwhile, the Japanese data centers never had any housing issues, allegedly. Like, ever. I don't know if that is actually a true fact, but that's what it usually sounds like. Like, they never had problems there. Whoops. I thought I had way more resource there. Well, shouldn't have gotten your hopes up if you did. I just messed up my rotation and we just started the pull. Yeah, pretty much, Tekna. It's kind of like a greed thing, isn't it? It's not like the EU data centers are like strictly better about that. I'm a bit surprised that there are like housing plots in like my area, like where my house is, that have been vacant for weeks. Like, that isn't normal, but I don't know why. Stares at giant pink man. You know what? If people are refusing to move into the housing near me because they don't like my house, that's their loss. If they don't like the look of my house, that's their problem. I reapplied my dot a little early there, but the thing is, I realize I'm looking at myself here and saying, well, if I don't do it now, I'll mess it up when I'm doing my burst here. Or, like, instead of playing perfectly and then failing, I'm playing to the strengths of how I play. So instead of just going, well, I should wait 1 GCD, I'm just using it a little early to make sure that I don't miss it. I don't think it's going to lead to very much damage loss over the course of the fight. Oh. Right. I think that went pretty well. That is a pretty good start on Total Chaos, because I don't think I played Bard in weeks. Let's see, Rost says, I had a self-imposed rule to only go to the next expansion once I've finished all the raid content. I guess at this point I should just drop it, but I can understand people not wanting to do it. It is an understandable way you'd like to do that, like want to experience all of the content when it's still like relevant in a way. I get that. Part of the problem is that, well, many of the fights are balanced around a game that doesn't really exist anymore, you could say. Which means that some players... So I'm just explaining this just to make sure that I understand why you're doing it that way. Some players do this just because they want to explore everything as it comes to them. So like you do all the level 50 stuff, and then all the level 60 stuff, and then all the level 70 stuff, and the trials and raids are right there, right? Other players do it because they want to experience the content when it was relevant, so to speak. Like, when you're level 50, Ifrit Extreme should be relevant, right? The reason why it doesn't quite work like that is because when Ifrit Extreme was relevant, tanks had a specific tank stance that made them do less damage, and healers had a special cleric stance, it was called, that they had to basically switch to attack position to make them do damage. There was a hit chance in the game, like you could miss because your stats were wrong. Like the game was completely different. There was resistance materia. You could make the Ifrit fight easier by filling your gear out with fire resistance materia. So while you can experience the bosses as they are when they come up now, it's like you don't have to do it when they serve themselves up on a plate to you. Like, you don't have to do them today because they're offered to you today. I think I've seen other people talk about doing old content at minimum item level. So what this means is, so when you queue for content, you have this menu up here, this cogwheel, where you can choose minimum item level. That will actually make it so that regardless of what gear you're wearing, your gear will actually be like nerfed and weakened down to be as weak as the developers deemed was possible to beat the fight with, which will make the bosses a lot more interesting, because if we take, for example, Bowl of Embers Extreme, it doesn't actually have an item level restriction, but if you clicked the minimum item level button, you would be set to item level 70, which is slightly better than like the gear you're served when you reach level 50, right? But if you don't click this, you could use Ironworks Magitech gear, which is item level 130, and it would allow you to do that. And it would be that strong. You would have like twice the HP that the game expects you to have. There are mechanics you would just be able to flat out ignore. But you can only use this option if you're bringing an 8-man party that you, for example, put together in Party Finder here. And then like go in there with everyone on the same page, like all 8 players. No, we're doing FFXIV the hardest way possible so that we really have to respect the fight. I don't know if that's what you're going for, Rosts, but I think it might be more interesting to like consider this for these extremes if you really want to experience them at their prime. The thing is that putting together such a group will be very difficult because not a lot of people do that. You might have to like look around for people to like make such a group. You might have to look for a long time. But the thing is, you would be able to like put together this group like over days and be like, all right, when you have your raid team, your static, as we typically call it, you would go, well, I do old extremes on minimum item level every Thursday or something. And then you'll get there. You don't have to sit in Duty Finder for 4 hours and have nothing to show for it. You just go when you go. It doesn't have to be minimum item level, but it's just as an example. You could also just make a group of sprouts that do it like synced, but it would probably be a lot more enjoyable to do it like that. I hope you understand what I mean. Not saying abandon your the fun way you had decided to do things. I'm actually saying if you try and organize it a little bit, you might be able to do it in a more fun way, where you don't sit all day. Right? Let's see. I feel like I missed something. Ali says, doing the Realm Reborn extremes on minimum item level and starting on no echo also at the moment with my group, and FFXIV almost broke us. I had one time where I queued for Mental Roulette and landed in FFXIV. As far as I recall, we beat it, but we beat it by the power of item level, because we never got the tank boss, we never got the tank switch mechanic correctly. We just somehow managed to live through it on one of the attempts, because we never got it right. And that's exactly why I'm saying consider doing it minimum item level, because then you can't, you are not allowed to just beat over a mechanic you don't understand by the sheer power of will, right? Phil says, does Tasha even have a minimum item level? It doesn't exactly have a minimum item level, but let's just say that you zone in there at level 15 instead of level 18 when you set minimum item level. And just to put it into perspective, if you queue into Somal at minimum item level, not only does your item level get set to 105, remember Ironworks Magitech, your level is set to 53. So that means that if you do it synced, normally synced, you will at the very least be level 54 and at minimum have item level 130. If I remember correctly, that gave me like 25% more HP as a tank. So it's massive, even though it doesn't say what the restrictions are. There is a massive difference between minimum and not minimum. But yeah, I would recommend trying that, Rosts, if you really want to do that. Doesn't have to be minimum item level, but try and put together a group. And if you don't want to put together like a fixed group, use the Party Finder at the very least, instead of sitting in Duty Finder queue for 4 hours. Like, that sucks. Because the worst part is that I have a feeling that when or if you finally land in a group, you're not even going to beat it. It's just too hard. Like, it's just way too hard. Right. So, see, Ross says, I understand you perfectly. I was just doing them because quests were pointing me there, but this organizing stuff sounds a bit much for me. I don't even know how much I like the game yet. That's fair. Yeah, there's a lot of quests that are just going to be thrown in your face. My recommendation is you don't have to pick up all quests on your way. You can focus on like the main quest and your job quest, and then try and look into the things that you want to do. But I understand how that can put you like off track in a way. Right, so next up we're doing level 90 dungeons. If you want to join me for the level 90 dungeons, just come over to where I'm standing. And then I'll see how many people want to come along. We might reorganize the group. Doesn't mean necessarily that, oh, I already have my group. Like, we'll figure out so that we have, like, everyone gets to try if they want to try. I've moved a bit, so you have to move again if you still want to come. Meanwhile, I will spin the wheel. Summoner. Well, that is very easy for me. Well, I'm guessing that BSR here wants to come along. Watch Kai mess up Summoner. Imagine that. You just to be clear, you just come over here where I am if you want to join. You don't have to self-police and be like, well, I already had a go. We'll take that when we get there, right? I'll figure out what we do. Case in point, I have to play DPS. So the first question is, well, that solves that. So the second question is there a possibility that BSR can play not tank? Because I know that Ymir really wanted to tank and switched off it for the sake of melee before. Perfect. But yeah, if I say, just to be clear, if I say on the stream, come over to me if you want to join, don't be like, well, I already had a go, so I'll just step away. Like, come over. I'll decide if we need, like, if we can't agree on who's coming, I'll figure it out. You don't have to police yourself for me. Just want to make that clear. And I do agree, that would be really cool, Tekna. I've wishfully mentioned that I would love to have, like, a way to experience the jobs how they used to be. We don't need, like, a Realm Reborn classic or something like that. We don't need all of that, but just a way to experience the older versions of the jobs. I would have loved to experience that because I got into the game in Stormblood, and even warning, small spoiler warning: if you're in Endwalker in the MSQ, if you're in Endwalker,
there was a beautiful blue.
If you're an Endwalker in the MSQ, you might want to like avert your eyes and come back in like 15 minutes because this dungeon is kind of spoilery and it's too hard to hide it.
The more its people.
It's a really cool dungeon, but it's just it's way too spoilery. Put a spoiler tag over the whole stream. Yeah, unfortunately, that's all I can do. Yeah, Reen says, fitting after yesterday's video. True, actually. And see, I said I said I'd do that in that video. I literally said that I do it like that. And I try my best to warn people if it happens. I'm pretty sure I said that.
Until they curse not the illness, but their corrupted.
It would be really cool if you could experience the old jobs, both because I never got to experience the Realm Reborn or Heavensward incarnations of the jobs, but also because I would like to re-experience the Stormblood incarnations. Like, I miss Stormblood Dark Knight, just as a random example. Pet size isn't max. That's correct, it's minimum. I think it's funnier when the pet is really, really tiny. We have tiny Phoenix. Isn't it cute? Isn't it grand? You know, Phil, that is actually a really interesting thing that I had some people point out in the comments of yesterday's video, is that when someone has like an outfit on that is very spoilery, or they have like a title on that is very spoilery, maybe the minion that they brought along is very spoilery. The thing is, if you don't say anything, then the Sprout might not even notice. They might not even realize that it's a spoiler if you don't say anything. Like, if you just don't talk about that robe that that person is wearing, and you just act like everything's normal, then the Sprout will not know that something's weird is up. So actually calling attention to it being a spoiler is actually a much bigger spoiler than than it would be to just let it be and just let them have the spoilery item on. Like, if you just ignore it, and I'm saying the rope because you know what I mean if you know, and if you don't know, well, then it's probably a spoiler for me to mention it, right? Specifically what I'm just talking about, right? I have to say I'm pretty happy that I'm summoner in this dungeon and not bard. Uh-oh. Okay, Gazel did see it. I was a little worried. Dago says, I remember born in Heavensward jobs were basic and with simple rotations. The thing is, I've looked over what they used to have, and what quote unquote made jobs difficult back in the day was that you had more choices, like you had more options. But the thing is, and this is a very important distinction to consider sometimes, what made that difficult was that even though you had a lot of options, many of the options led to wrong decisions. I hope that makes sense somewhat, but basically, you could use the wrong ability at a specific time, and the reason why that could happen was because you were given bad options. And you could argue that giving incorrect options so that you can fail is not very interesting, right? Case in point, why is it Summoner has Physic? Why do we have Physic when it doesn't do anything anyway? Why is it given as an option that is basically wrong in 99.99999% of the situations you would use it? Like, Physic is like the perfect example of an action that is wrong for the sake of being wrong. Some players, older players of the game, might argue that the reason why we have Physic is because Scholar gets Physic, but then again, we don't get Bio. So, like, the argument that Arcanist needs to have Physic because Scholar doesn't work anymore, because Arcanist has nearly nothing in common with Scholar nowadays. But back in the day, so to speak, jobs just had more of this kind of stuff, of like things you could just do wrong. Like, you could just do it in the wrong way. Metsunoshin says, how would Scholar heal in low-level dungeons though? Scholar can have Physic without Arcanist having Physic, because the thing is, you don't have... I'll show you after this dungeon, but basically, Scholar has like 2 actions in common with Arcanist. Like Ruin and Physic. Oh yeah, and Raise. Sorry about that. So you could, like, Scholar, like, what Scholar can do is completely unrelated to what Arcanist can do nowadays. But back in the day, like, back when there was, like, an overlap, there it would have made sense to argue that, well, you need to have Physic so that Scholar can have Physic. Snowleaf says, I think that the Summoner doesn't get bio. Oh, no, I'm not saying that Summoner doesn't get bio. I'm saying Arcanist doesn't get bio. But you're right that technically there's still plenty of time to fix that problem. It might be something that they plan to rectify in Dawn Trail, but it is weird that it hasn't been fixed now, right? Because, like, you could say it's a recent development, but Endwalker has existed in 21 months. So there's been a lot of time to change this. So I don't know if it's that fair to say that it's rather recent.
And when one asked, what is the
Good luck, Rusts.
there were none left.
Feeler says, how do you gear alt jobs? I'm curious because it seems like you can do Endwalker content with all of them. What you do is you go to the market board and then you buy a crafted gear set. Like this.
Farther still existed a star without strife. When none remembered life's
How
trials,
did you expect them to rewrite 2 jobs in 21 months? I don't know. They reworked Summoner for Endwalker. They just decided to not also rework Scholar. I'm not saying that they should do this. I'm not saying that the mistake on their part is that they didn't also rework Scholar. The mistake I'm saying is, I mean, the only thing I'm suggesting here is, why do we have Physic? I'm not saying you should fix Scholar. I'm saying just either make Arcanist and Summoner Physic scale with intelligence or remove it. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying they didn't make the game pristine and perfect. I don't mind. I'm just saying that it's a little weird that we have Physic
what is people
on that scales with mind only.
lost apathy?
That's what I think. But I don't think that they have to fix and rework Scholar to make that happen. I just think that it's weird that Arcanist has Physic that doesn't really work. That's ultimately what I'm trying to get across, at least, if it didn't seem like that was what I was trying to say. And that's a fair counterpoint, Snowleaf, that before level 50, Physic isn't bad. We actually have like a little bit of a meme on the community Discord server of trying to figure out what you can do to make Physic as strong as possible. Like seeing the current contender for the best gear for healer summoner is I believe the gear set from Frontline. Gazel figured that out. But you need to have, I believe, 100 Seal Rock wins to do that. So that's a work in progress. I shouldn't have used Ruin. I saw the cast, the remaining duration on it and confused myself. I should not have done that. DPS loss. Thank you, Thomas.
Its steps were light.
Work in progress. PvP doesn't exist. What I mean by work in progress is that we know that this PvP gear is the possibly the best option to make this meme build, but no one in that Discord server has 100 Seal Rock wins, so we don't actually have the ability to test it. That's what I mean by work in progress.
They all slept happily ever after.
And I didn't move in time. Uh-oh. I think I'm going to die. That's my bad. I had like a toe in the mechanics, so that's my bad. Rost says, thought it was a ready check, but it was a disband vote. Ah. Yeah. That is really mean, by the way, but I know how that happens. I know exactly what happened there. I'll explain it after this one, but it has something to do with mentors. OSHA isn't real. They stopped making relics after Stormblood. They just discontinued that entire feature. People didn't like it. They just got rid of it. Uh-oh. Yep, sorry about me making mistakes. It's streamer brain and me being so focused on discussing stuff with the chat. I'm sorry about that. So, what happened, Rosts, is I talked about this very briefly earlier. The only way that I feel as a scale lady, what is that? Scale lady is her, Sophia. It seems like the mentors could in fact not bring equilibrium. So why did they instantly vote disband? The reason is when you queue for trial roulette, so this one, I'm just going to go from start to finish to explain this. When you queue for trial roulette, everything from this, wait, actually, no, not that one. Everything from this, so 8-man content, to this. I think Earth's Found is also included. So from here to here is included. Then it skips all of the rest of the Realm Reborn and jumps and grabs this to this. Again, skips all of the extreme stuff and all of the Stormblood non-extreme stuff and all the Shadowbringers non-extreme stuff. It is very rare for Earth's Fount to appear because a lot of people don't even have it. Now, the key thing is that extremes are not included. So you might be asking yourself, okay, so what roulette do I have to queue for to get random extremes? And there's only one roulette that can randomly serve up an extreme, and it's the Mentor roulette. And to be perfectly clear, the reason for that is that what content is in the Mentor roulette is the following. All of this. All of this. Now, see, now here's the extremes coming in. All of the extremes. Every single one. Except the most recent ones. But basically, all content from all old content. All old content, without exception, pretty much. The only exception, actually, is Savage content. And Coils of Bahamut, I believe. Coils of Bahamut is in no roulettes. So what that means is when you queue for this, the only people that is going to land in a group with you are other people, notably Sprouts, that specifically clicked I want to do this and clicked join. And mentors. And you might be thinking, okay, well, the mentors queued for this because they want to do this, right? The thing is, the reward for doing Mentor Roulette is kind of whatever. You get you can see this is the reward for doing Mentor Roulette. A bit of money, 30 of these, 10 of these. This is the reward for doing a normal raid roulette. Like, double that and then also some poetics on top. So basically, the completion reward for doing a Mentor Roulette in general isn't worth it. There is one reason that most mentors do this content. Let me see if I can find it, because I usually have trouble finding it when I'm looking for it. I think it's in this menu. Might not be in this menu. Is it in character? Here it is. So, when you beat a roulette that you landed in through Mentor, you get one completed duty. And you need 2,000 of them to get a mount. So a lot of mentors do it just because they're mount collectors. You might notice that I've done a grand total of 10 mentor roulettes. What this means is that if you leave a duty, you're put in quarantine for 30 minutes and you're not allowed to queue for anything for 30 minutes. Oh, thank you, Arya. Good night. If you leave a duty, you're blocked from queuing for anything for 30 minutes. But if you land in, for example, Containment Bay P1T6, the probability that you actually beat it in the 60 minutes allotted is basically 0. So that means that for the mentors who are there just to like complete the achievement, this is like a time efficiency question. Is it better for me to sit this 1 hour through and hope that we beat it? Or is it better for me to leave now, just eat the 30-minute wait time, and queue for something again? And maybe I'll get, like, oh, I don't know, a Bowl of Embers normal, which takes less than 5 minutes. And clearing that gives me the same reward. Septum is Maliboba. So for the mentors in your group, Rosts, they view the encounter not as, oh, we need to complete this, this is interesting. Most of them will view it as like, will I get a clear for this? Is it worth the 60 minutes time investment? Exactly as Gazel put it. If you leave from a duty that lasts over 30 minutes, you've saved time, because the only reason a mentor's there, usually, is for the clear. Like, this clear, some mentors queue mentor roulette just for fun, but given that someone made a vote abandon really early, they basically made like just saw that there's 7 mentors here and 1 sprout and went, well, we don't want to be here, and then just called it off, because most of those mentors do not care. Destruction Bomb says, owner of the Astro mount here. This is going to be weird, but I actually genuinely enjoyed mentor roulette. It was fun helping others. See, that's good. And it's good that we have some mentors that did mentor roulette for the fun of it. I've talked about this before, and we'll get back to roulettes, daily roulettes in a little bit, but I just want to point out that the problem that causes this, the problem that causes mentors to act like this, is that the game measures the mentors on, but did you win? Which means that the mentors that do mentor roulette, they zone into content and evaluate, we will not beat this, so there's no point in me staying. If they made this, I don't know, and hey, maybe Destruction Bomb might be able to like give an input on this, as they did the 2000 roulettes. If they made it, I don't know, do mentor roulettes for 2,000 or 3,000 hours instead. That sounds like a lot, but hear me out. Instead of having it, you have to complete it. Make it be in duties and actively be completing them and trying to beat them for 2,000 or even 3,000 hours. Why I'm saying that they should make it more time is because given that you can no longer fail to accumulate progress, 2,000 might not actually be that unreasonable. 3,000 might be reasonable. Oh, I sold pink dye. Some people would say then there would be reason for mentors to just stay in the roulette until the timer runs out. Obviously, the counters would just stop when the duty is over. So like when you kill the final boss, it stops ticking. And you might also argue, oh, well, that would incentivize mentors to intentionally slow down groups. But the thing is, if you're getting credit for playing the game, why would you be intentionally not playing the game when it's just like you're getting the same reward whether you rush through the dungeons or take your time? So just play the game. I think that would be a better solution. But I could imagine that people that actually did the 2000 mentor roulettes might be able to talk better about that. I don't quite understand that, Metsunoshin. I'd rather they remove everything but expert? I don't quite understand. So you're saying that we should just remove all roulettes? Except, why? Huh? Remove everything but so you mean they should only have extreme content? Who needs a mentor for Zastasha, a Bowl of Embers? You will be surprised. We've talked about this before. In fact, tea time 2 days ago, we saw some absolutely incredibly poor play in a level 90 dungeon. So let me put it like this. There are players that could benefit from a good mentor in any content. Just because you find it easy doesn't mean that it's easy for everyone. There's also the part that part of the purpose of the mentor roulette is actually that it's the catch-all. If there's not a lot of people queuing for a specific like level 50 dungeon, so like people are stuck waiting for, I don't know, Keep Up the Lake, which they have to do to progress their MSQ, right? Well, you'll get 3 mentors. Like, at worst, you're getting 3 mentors because they will do anything. They're basically willing to do anything. That's what they're saying when they queue for mentor roulette. The problem is that because the reward that they're expecting is entirely dependent on whether they beat it or not, they're willing to just quit if they don't think it can be done. That's why I'm saying make it like time-based instead of clear-based. Then, like, the thing is, the best way to make mentors do more mentor roulettes is to remove the content that isn't meant to be queued in Duty Finder, like extremes. But the alternative solution is to just make it so that mentors are incentivized to stay regardless of what they get. And you could do that by making the achievement just count time instead of counting clears. Then, personally, if I usually use Sephiroth Extreme as the example. If I rolled Sephiroth Extreme, but I just had to, like, be there to progress my achievement, I would just be like, oh, nice, that means we have an hour here. Let's see how much we can learn. Like, let's practice for an hour. But I have actually gotten Sephiroth Extreme, and we didn't beat it. We weren't even close, because it's simply too hard. Metsu says the poor subs who get a mentor in Sastacha who just sits around. As I said, and I just went over this, on the one hand, you could do the negative argument of saying the mentor could just choose to just AFK when they get content and then they'll get progress. But the thing is, you can just report them. And then they'll get punished because they're intentionally preventing the duty from being finished. Like, that's the same as if your tank in a regular duty goes AFK. Without saying anything, you either kick them for being AFK or you report them for intentionally preventing the duty from being finished. You can do that with a mentor who's doing that. Or, on the flip side, the mentor has no incentive to AFK in the duty. They are here to play the game, they could just play the game. And when they finish that mentor roulette, they can just queue for another mentor roulette. The only thing they need to worry about is being in a mentor roulette to progress their achievement. Also, hey Shiro, I hope you're doing well. Right. Remove mentor roulette achievements and titles and mount. That is also a solution. Put the mount in something else. Make it so that mentors are mentors to be mentors and not mentors to have a fancy crown next to their name and not mentors to get a mount. Make it so that mentors are mentors to actually teach people, right? Now, let's get back to actually doing content. The next one is 50, 60, 70, 80 roulette. So if you want to join me for... Let me just move over here. If you want to join me for that, come over to me. But yeah, you can easily make a bad faith argument that, oh, Black Mage, excellent. Just get rid of all the mages, why don't we? We can always make a bad faith argument that, oh, if they make it time-based, the mentors will just cheese it. But that sounds terribly boring and like an extremely easy way to get banned. Hey Marsh, thank you so much. Also very true, Rosks. Are we only 3? No one else wants to join for 5, 6, 7, 8? 5, 6, 7, 8. Everyone's allowed. You don't have to worry about you already having a turn. Does this work? Oh, I'm really looking forward to getting some of the 8-man contents that can bring more people. I feel bad that I'm leaving all of you guys here. Harley says I would, but I'm on light. Light and chaos are connected. If you log out to character select, you can right-click your name over on the right and just choose data center travel. And then you can visit. You just have to be in EU. Yeah, if you're in EU, you can visit. If you're in NA or anywhere, like if you're not in an EU data center, you have to make an EU character to visit. Oh, that's fair, Harley. But yeah, you'd have to make an EU character to join. I know Gazel specifically mainly plays on the Japanese data center, but I specifically made a character and leveled it to play here. Any bets on what we're getting? Snowcloak. Snowcloak. Not Snowcloak. I don't remember ever getting this. I can't even remember this dungeon, so this is going to be very interesting. Level 70 even. I don't remember anything from this dungeon, so this is going to be very awkward. Is this an optional dungeon? I don't even remember. Nice misclick on mana font. Oh, I didn't even see there was a donut AoE. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my camera, as you can see. I tried stepping closer so that I could see something, and then there was a circle AoE from the Minotaur. Oh, there's only 2 mobs. I should use Thunder more. Yeah, exactly, Mitsu. The thing is, I'm very well acquainted with reporting people for AFKing because I play PvP sometimes. There are some players that are very, very good at just giving up and going AFK because they think there's no repercussions for it. So I'm to combat that, not afraid of just flat out reporting someone if they go AFK in the middle of a PvP match. I'm not going to put up with that. I do not care. You can come with any reason you like. You're going to get reported if you go AFK in the middle of my PvP match. You don't even have to be on my team. If I figure out who you are, I would absolutely report you for the other team. I just won't be able to know who you are because of how PvP works. Shiro says this is where the Ixal find out their origin of creation and have a mental breakdown. Oh. Oh yeah. Speaking of the international data center travel, allegedly, I believe I read somewhere that worldwide, like international or worldwide data center travel is actually already like implemented in the game. It's just that the developers, or rather, as we've been told, I believe Yoshi P said, that they're not sure if it's a good idea to actually unleash it upon the world. Because each community in Final Fantasy XIV is extremely unique. And they're scared of what it might do to the communities. Like, for example, as we talked about earlier, if you go to the Japanese data center, it is basically standard that you queue for duty, like through Duty Finder for extremes and stuff. That is perfectly normal. But I think part of the reason for that is because everyone has done their homework. Like, it actually works, and you actually get the clear when you do. But if randos just go, oh, I just have to go to the Japanese data center, and then I'll get queue pops, what might happen is that the quality of the people that queue, like, drop drastically, and suddenly the Japanese player base can't do it anymore because, I don't know, bad players from other data centers came and ruined it, right? And that's just one example. Another example is I've heard that that Japanese players that the Japanese players, like in the Japanese data centers, are very different in how they act in cities. Like I've heard that Western data centers are very loud in the cities, which is very weird, isn't it? I don't remember what that is, so I'm just going to hope that it doesn't mean I have to move. But that is like another example. Oop. Oh, that means move. That also means move. Yeah, exactly, HK. I believe it's very normal for Japanese players to mainly communicate like in tells or in like private conversations. But I'm saying I believe because I have no proof. It is only something that I've heard. Oh, interesting, Ali. Thank you for adding that. That was the Sophia Extreme Equilibrium mechanic. By the way, the boss channels the Warring Triad from the holograms and uses their attacks. Right. I was a lot more focused on just not getting hit, so I wasn't paying attention at all to what the boss was actually doing. I was just, like, looking up like, oh, right, Citadel Buster. That's something that the Ultima weapon does, and that means run. Bruh. Yeah, that is a very good point, that there could be a lot of friction. The thing is that the data center with a like, I think a very good way to put it is if you party in a library and some people want it to be quiet, who wins? The loud person or the quiet person. Unless there's some rule that forces the loud person to be quiet, the loud person wins. So the data centers that are more quiet, notably, for example, allegedly the Japanese data centers, they would just stop being quiet. Like, congratulations, you're a loud data center now. It's called the blacklist. I think a part of it also comes from what would be a good way to put it, because so something you may have noticed, especially if you're in the NA community, I believe, Dynamis players pretty much just have to come to the bigger data centers to do stuff, because everyone just goes to the bigger data centers to do stuff. Compare that to the Oceanic data center. There, I believe Fila might be able to talk more on this, but there, they just had to figure out how to make stuff happen. Like, they literally used the party finder to put together casual content, because maybe no one will queue for it if you don't do that. Like, if you don't actually put together a group through party finder, then it's just not happening. So because they're low on people, they had to figure out ways to make stuff happen. But if suddenly you could just travel to a bigger data center, then that would automatically solve the issue, and then you no longer would have to do that. And on the other side of the spectrum, you could abuse the fact that that the Oceanic data center is like that. Somehow, possibly. Like, if you want to do very obscure content, you come to the Oceanic data center, otherwise you just don't. Which ultimately probably wouldn't work, because by the time that you would have worldwide data center travel, you wouldn't even need to do that. You just wouldn't need to do that. Like, the Oceanic players would just come to a different region to do content, but then we're back where we started, because the whole reason that the Oceanic players needed their own data center was because they're very far away from the world, right? Like the rest of the world, so that if they don't have their own data center, their connection is going to be terrible. But if they have to go to NA or EU or JP to actually play the game, because everyone's there, then you might as well just not have an Oceanic data center, right? So that's also part of the reasonable concerns why you maybe don't want worldwide data center travel. Nice. Basardi says, in EU, I find it interesting how Light has the more active party finding community than Chaos. That is also an interesting point. This is comparable to World of Warcraft in a way. So, a long time ago, many years ago, I believe it was in Burning Crusade, there was a very slight advantage to be Horde. So, the orcs and all that, like there was some sort of racial advantage, like some races had better options. So many of the best raiders would start to move over to the Horde side, because that gave them a slightly better experience, like they had a slight advantage over if they played Alliance. Over the years, this advantage kind of disappeared, like it slowly went away. But now like today, I believe they made it so that on retail World of Warcraft you can raid cross faction now. You might be wondering why that is, but the last time I saw the like the breakdown of the top, like first 100 guilds that beat the currently newest raid tier in World of Warcraft, it was like 95 of them were Horde. And you had to get to like top 30 before you started seeing Alliance guilds. And why is that? Well, because at some point all of the best players moved to Horde. And then more best players moved to Horde to join the best players. And then the really good players moved to Horde because all the best players are there and they want to play with the best players. And then the kinda good players moved to Horde, and then the good players moved to Horde, and then the meh players moved to Horde, and then all the raiders moved to Horde, right? And at some point, people stopped moving to Horde because there was an inherent advantage and started moving because there was a social advantage. And once the social advantage became clear, there's pretty much nothing you can do at that point. Why is it that Light happens to be the party finder data center on EU? I'm guessing at some point people like discovered that there was more raiders on Light, so there might be slightly more raiders on Light, and when they then opened the gate so you could play cross data center, people just went, well, there's slightly more party finder groups over on Light, so I'll just go over there. And now we're here. So there's not much you can do about that. The only solution to that would be to make a region-wide party finder, for example. So that while you would have to like jump over to the other data center to play together, you might be able to make groups or make party finder for your entire region. Then Chaos players wouldn't have to go over to Light. Absorb Chaos into Light. But yeah, there are solutions. Case in point, the solution World of Warcraft did was just go, oh, you don't have to be Horde to play with the Horde. You can just be Alliance. It's no problem. But they genuinely seem to have tried to make Alliance more appealing to try and fix it. But it's just... once there is a social aspect, that stays there. But that is, of course, the concern. I think that is the big concern with worldwide data center travel is what is the most popular data center for raiding in NA? Is it Ether? Crystal? Can't remember. Phil says Crystal literally never has a high-end party finder up during my statics raid time versus Ether's 100. Okay, so it's Ether. If we had worldwide data center travel, could we imagine that there would be an argument for EU players going to Ether to make their groups? Like, forget about Light and Chaos. If Ether's bigger, why not just go there? Now, you might think, sure, then we just have like one big like party finder lobby data center basically. Like if everyone just goes to Ether to make their groups, that'll solve itself over time, right? Then, when the group is put together, you have a new problem. Which data center are we going to actually play this on? Like, if everyone comes to Ether to play together, that means that... when the group is put together, you might be sitting there like, alright, so what region are people from? And one goes, I'm from the Oceanic data center, I'm from the Japanese one, and then like a few people go, I'm from EU, and then the rest goes, we're from NA, so you have to argue, well, in that case, we have to all play on NA, because half the group is NA. But your tanks are Paladin and Warrior, and they're two of the NA players, and the healers happen to be, one of them happens to be a Sage on NA, and one of the DPS, maybe let's say the Summoner, is also NA. But the EU players are like playing ninja and monk, and the JP player is actually a machinist. So you are in a situation where you could argue that, yeah, on one hand, there's most players on NA, but you don't need the good connection. And now we have an argument, right? So it might be a problem. I don't know if it would end up like that, but this is like the kinds of concerns that the development team might have. I don't know if that's the kind of concerns they have, but they certainly have concerns that it would ruin the communities on the specific regions if they just open the gates. You know what I mean? Now, next up is leveling roulette. So if you want to join for leveling roulette, I've moved a little bit. You come over to me. And then I'll spin the wheel again. And Reaper. Basil says Japanese players simply don't want their party finder get filled with English or other languages. That is also a very good point. I could also imagine that they would feel that their cities would be alienating if suddenly there was a bunch of people speaking English there. And that would be very, overwhelming because, as we talked about, allegedly the Japanese data centers are very quiet in cities. And if that's true, then that means that it only takes one weird Westerner coming over to make it feel weirdly loud. Right? Just one is all it takes. Exactly, social friction that they want to avoid. I don't know what would be best, and I just want to be clear that from my perspective, the way I see it is that, for the most part, I would find it nice to have worldwide data center travel, but I understand how it might impact the game in a bad way. So that's why I'm not like, they should do something. They should just open it now, because I understand that it might become it might be a problem. They might know something that we don't know. I'm guessing they have a lot of data on what happened when they opened regional data center travel, right? Basil says, speaking of which, for some reason, every time I go to Limsa, there's a RMT bot message, which was unseen in Japanese data centers. Yeah, the West, I don't know if this is just not a thing for Japanese players, but in the West, it is, for some reason, it appears to be economically feasible to sell money in games, even though it's illegal. Because the thing is, we wouldn't have this if it wasn't economically feasible. What I mean by that is, of course, that if no one bought Gil, there wouldn't be any RMT bots. So someone is trading, someone is doing it. Even if everyone says, oh, it's not me, someone out there is doing it. And either there's a few people buying an incredible amount, or there's a lot of people buying it that aren't being honest. Do you know anyone who buys skill? I don't. But I'm pretty confident that if you knew someone who did, they wouldn't admit to it. Exactly, Metsu. Why would you admit to that? HK says, I knew a person once. What happened to them? Did they get swallowed by the RMT mafia or something? An example of when it might be advantageous to have bought Gil, just hypothetically, is that in specifically the first week of a raid tier, there is an advantage to being able to get the ornate crafted chest pieces that cost a golden recommendation or a golden commendation from Chloe. These things usually cost over 20 million gil, sometimes more. Not everyone has that kind of money just lying around. But if you want to compete for World First, there might be an argument for doing that. Right? For the rest of the game, I don't know if there's any particular argument for why it would be worth it to buy Gil. And even then, you don't need that on a chess piece to get World First. You don't need it. You don't need it. It would give you an extremely tiny advantage over those that don't have it, but you don't need it. That's also a very good example, Metsu, is that if you really want to get deep into it, you can buy anything. As in, if you have enough gil, you can probably pay people to run you through the most recent Savage content. So, if you throw enough money at a problem, you might be able to use it to compensate for your skill level. Which is not good. It's not good. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. But it's not a good thing. The Schmooze says too many body checks this tier. Too hard carry. That's a good point. That's a good counterpoint. But let's just say that people that buy boosts in a Savage raid are probably not beneath doing even shadier stuff. And what I mean by that is, if you're already doing other illegal stuff, there's nothing that says that that these players wouldn't be against account sharing, which is also illegal, by the way. So I'm just saying that technically you can buy anything in a game with enough money. It's just whether you can find a seller. As Metsu says, they would pay out static 120 to 240 million every week. But then there's also the argument, if you have enough money, you can even buy the game. Yeah, I mean, sure, you could. You might be able to buy Square Enix. But it's complicated because part of the reason why there aren't that many defenses or protections against people doing that necessarily is because this is a little similar to the problem that we discussed with if the mentor achievement was for people playing the game for hours in the mentor roulette. if you get the reward for just playing the game, then there's no reason to cheat about it, right? Similarly, what benefit do you have of having the best gear in the game from the most current Savage raid? What can you do with that? Square X by Elon Musk. No, it's just Square X. And the logo is that weird X he's decided on, but like with a square around it. But what can you do with the best gear in the game? You can use it to beat the hardest content in the game, but if you needed to cheat to get the best gear in the game, then you don't have anything to use the gear for. So the main use you would have out of buying a boost in the Savage raid is to have the gear to just pose in cities, right? And just say, look at how good I am. And then people are like, oh, nice. So you did the newest raid? And then you have like that picture of that cat that's just really sad after they're asked if they're good at their job after being there for years. You wouldn't actually have anything to show for it. You would just be like, exactly, the standard PayPal legends. That's a really good way to put it. Exactly. If you bought the best gear in the game, then you can't actually play the content that it was designed for, so you have no benefit of it. You can't use it. So that, I think, is part of the reason why it's not like the biggest concern that sometimes you can boost people in the newest Savage raid or something to that effect, because it doesn't really change very much. The only thing that it actually hurts is that it reduces the value of the of those titles and the glamours that are supposed to be exclusive. VX says the best part is meeting legends in Dungeon Finder and see them fail the easiest mechanics. That is actually a pretty funny one, because I have a friend who, I don't think they are doing it anymore, but they used to like both raid in a Savage raid team and they did ultimates, and they told me that they don't actually play very well when they're playing casual content, because when they play casual content, they aren't actually like that focused. They're not trying very hard because they don't feel motivated to try very hard because, quote unquote, the content is very easy. Like, if you've ever heard me say that you have to respect the content, that is basically the opposite of what they're doing. If you're not actually playing the game and fighting the fight properly, then you're not really respecting the content. If you're ignoring mechanics or acting like you can ignore a mechanic, it's almost certainly because you don't actually respect the fight. VX says, but your friend at least does the rotation, right? I mean, I think the core difference is that in Ultimate, they would, like, I believe they played Monk and Samurai. In Ultimate, they would do, like, the perfectly optimized rotation. In a random dungeon, they might make a lot of mistakes. They might mess up mechanics because they're not trying as hard. They're not trying to be perfect. Which leads to legends that aren't playing perfectly, right? Even though you should expect them to be like the best of the best. Nice. The best, exactly. Umia has it right, and this is also something that I've talked about before. Having the title for having beaten Uvu, for example, means that you're extremely good at that fight. Like, actually, that is what it says. You can beat an ultimate and not actually understand how your toolkit works if you've just, like, memorized an opener and your burst. If you can just memorize it, you might not actually understand how to play the game anywhere else. I've met people that have ultimate titles that were like, wait, sprint has double duration when you don't use it in combat? What? But you don't need that in an ultimate, so you don't know that. If you have an ultimate title, says nothing about the ability to beat a dungeon. Or how to play when everything isn't perfect. Tells you nothing about how to play in a trial or a normal raid where people aren't actually using their cooldowns correctly. You might be able to do better if you optimize around the chaos. But you're not used to doing that. That ultimate title just says, well, either it says that you have a lot of money, or it says, I'm really good at this fight. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you were lucky. And Shiro says, I mean, we've all seen the ultimate legend cleave the whole party with Shiva's sword, thinking it's a stack, or wiping the party on pre-rework Thorn March. That's also the thing, is it's similar to how mentors are expected to be perfect sometimes. Is that you see a mentor mess up a somewhat obscure boss fight because they don't remember the mechanic, or they don't even know the mechanic, they never did it right. To have a mentor crown doesn't mean that you're perfect. It doesn't even mean that you should be perfect. I've talked about this many times before, but the mentor crown is more so supposed to mean that you're willing to teach others in the game. Doesn't mean that you're the best. Like, a teacher in school doesn't, like a math teacher in school doesn't mean that they know everything there is about math. I know, shocking, but they don't actually know everything. If they knew everything, they would be a professor. Math. Nikolai says, but they do get mad if you correct them. That is actually, actually, that is a really good example. So a burger crown, and I'm just clarifying this because some people might not know, and I know Nikolai does not know because I know Nikolai does not actually play Final Fantasy XIV. A burger crown is the name that the Final Fantasy XIV community has for the most part agreed on, is the name of a mentor in Final Fantasy XIV. That means they have this crown next to their name, but they're actually really bad at the game. Or they're not a very good mentor. And that's a burger crown. You know, the one from Burger King. Because they just took the crown because they could have it, not because they were going to actually use it. Teachers in school that are bad at teaching or get mad when you correct them when they are actually wrong are like Burger Crown mentors in Final Fantasy XIV. They're technically a teacher because they have the education to be a teacher, but they're not actually a good teacher. Potentially. Of course math teachers don't know everything. They ask us even for the easiest calculation in class. What is 2 plus 2? I know, I need you guys to tell me. Of course I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. Then it would make it too easy for you. Hey Drutharian, hope you're doing well. Is it 7? Yes. Oh yeah, that's true, Ali. When a jester wears the crown, he does not become the king. The kingdom becomes a circus. Very true. Very true. I do remember that, that one was brought up before. It's a very good one. I love that quote. I had a math teacher who was, to the very least, very bad at teaching. That teacher also showed us things that were flat out wrong. My teacher at gymnasium was incredible. He might not have been the best teacher, and he couldn't teach everyone, because the thing is, some people learn in different ways, but he would try to teach people. Like if they said I don't understand that, he would try to explain it to them. Yet gymnasium, that is like a thing between grade school and like university, not very important. The point is that it's a school, right? And we're like age somewhere around 15 to 19, so 15 to 18 maybe, typically, but you can be a lot older. But he would try to teach, if you didn't understand, he would like explain it the way that he did at the blackboard, and then if you said I don't understand it, he would try to explain it a little differently. But if you still said I don't get it, then he would usually go, well, try and read the book then, because I don't know how to tell it differently. Like maybe the book can help you. But he tried his best, and he was possibly the best math teacher I ever had. And a very interesting experience I had one time a long time ago, and this might be very significant for all of you. There was one day where there was something I didn't understand, like in an exercise. I can't remember if it was like homework or like just an exercise or whatever it is. But I asked him about it, and he explained it to me, and I got really angry with him because I didn't get it. Like I really got mad, that, like not at him, but at the task, and got very riled up. And when I finally understood it, when he'd explained it to me, I said sorry that I got angry with him. And he said, maybe not exactly those words, but he said that he didn't mind that I got angry about it. He didn't mind that I got really emotional about it, because the reason I got really emotional about it was because I actually cared about learning it. The reason I got emotional about it was because I really, really wanted to understand it. Which he was pretty happy about, right? That made it easier for him because he knew that I wanted to learn this. Like, if he just helped me, we would get through this because I wasn't going to back down. So think about that. If you're finding it really, really annoying, you get really angry, there's something you don't understand, that's a good thing, because that means that you're emotionally invested. There's a much better chance that you're going to learn it. Right? Shira says, I once knew a Burger King crown mentor who mained tank but never turned on tank stance because they liked the challenge of managing aggro. This reminds me of when you meet healers that refuse to attack, because in other MMOs healers aren't meant to attack, or some MMO they're not meant to attack, so they just refuse to do it because the way they know healing, you don't attack, forgetting that this is not that MMO, and in Final Fantasy XIV the healers actually expected to attack. Not only that, but game is actually balanced around the fact that healers will be attacking, in fact. And you're all welcome to go try this if you don't believe me. If you go to the smith and do the second exercise, which is about healing an ally, if you just cast heals on the tank for you, the NPC will eventually have like a little pop-up message where they're like, well, if no one needs healing, you could cast some offensive spells. Like, the game actually tells you, if you don't need to heal anyone, attack. You have no argument against that. Like, the game actually says so right at the outset. If you take the tutorial for healing, they'll tell you you should be attacking. There's also tanks on the other side of the spectrum that are like, I shouldn't need to do damage because my job is to take damage and nothing else. The phrasing is very important, yes. If no one needs healing, you can attack. And sometimes people miss that one. Right. So the next one is actually Trials Roulette. So if you want to come along, I'm just going to move a step over here so that we reset the counter. If anyone wants to come along for Trial Roulette, step over to me. Come on over. The only requirement is that you have the Trial Roulette unlocked. There's no, oh, I don't have very many trials unlocked. If you have this roulette, you can come. That is the only requirement. But you also have to come over here, so that I know that you want to join. Let me just spin the roulette. BSR says, someone once said to me that the best way to tank is to hold aggro, so I should spam unmanned since it generates more aggro. Bruh. I mean, they have the right idea. They have the right idea. Also, we got Samurai. Dressarian says, off topic, but do you have a suggested beginner job or jobs for PvP? So, remember Samurai, we're playing Samurai. Also, let me just invite people. Did I miss anyone? I think it's everyone. Summoner is actually an okay starter. The reason is that they have an extremely heavy emphasis on using their limit break, and something that you would need to learn when you're playing PvP compared to PvE is that you need to use your limit break. Like, you need to teach yourself that limit break is there to just be thrown out there. You just, oh, I have limit break, wham! And Summoner's power is extremely skewed towards their limit break. Their limit break is extremely strong. So you have a huge emphasis on doing that. The rest of the Summoner toolkit is basically a toolbox. You have like you have 5 things that are just there for specific purposes. Crimson Cyclone is the one you click when you go in to kill someone, because it follows up with an even bigger attack. You combine that with Fester, which is an execute move. It does more damage when the person is near death. So you want to use those together for a big burst. Mountain Buster is a crowd control, so you use that for crowd controlling people. Slipstream has a cast time, and it's more like an AoE you place down from range, so that one is the one that you use from a distance when you're not sure if it's time to jump in. Radiant Aegis is a shield you can put on yourself or someone else, and it actually teaches you something really interesting, because this shield both reduces damage taken and is an absorption shield, which means that if you put it on someone else who also put an absorption shield on themselves, then it might last longer. So you don't necessarily have to use it on yourself. You probably will, but you could use it as a support move, and then Ruin is just a filler. But every single button in your toolkit has a purpose, a specific purpose, and your limit break is so important that you should basically use it almost on cooldown. So I think actually that Summoner might be a very good starter. I'm not saying that it's an easy PvP job. As Fel said, all jobs can be pretty complex in PvP. Summoner has a huge skill ceiling in PvP, and you don't have to play Summoner only. But Summoner is a pretty good job to teach you many of the things that you want to look out for when you're playing PvP. And then you might have a better starting position to figure out what you actually want to play in PvP. Right, so Samurai. We have 8 people. Do we have a balanced group? I think we need well, we might not need an extra tank, technically. Unless we get a random encounter where we actually need a tank switch, we might not need 2 tanks. However, if there is someone in the group who's like, I actually wanted to tank, feel free to. I'm not saying you have to play DPS just because we can, but we might be fine with 1 tank and 2 healers. Time to get Bismarck. If we get Bismarck, I'll be the samurai tank. Just make sure to focus my target first. I'll do it. Oh, nice. We don't need 2 tanks for this. Whew. Uh-oh. There was a little tank stance thing there at the start. That is also very true, Shiro. There's actually 2 limit breaks for Summoner. The general answer on which limit break you should use when you're playing Summoner is the simple answer is that in most cases the burst damage of Bahamut is better at turning a fight to your advantage. The complicated answer is that Phoenix is the defensive powerhouse, while Bahamut is the offensive powerhouse. If you're trying to finish someone off, then Bahamut is better. If you're trying to survive, or you have a lot of party members with you, then Phoenix might be better to, like, turn the tide. But in most cases, just using Bahamut blindly without thinking isn't bad. Like, knowing when to use Phoenix is like an advanced skill, I think. So that'll come with practice. It's very simple. If you use your limit breaks very aggressively, then you'll like have a lot of opportunities to learn when to use which limit break if you're using it very aggressively. You'll get used to using your limit break to like play around the situation. Why is it always Titan? I don't know. Titan, why do you like me so much? Ugh. Well, we are not getting an LB2. What happened, kids? Huh? Remember, Titans, tank busters cleave. Shiro says, seriously, I don't know. When do we use Phoenix over Bahamut? So... let me just try and explain that very quickly before we go back to more roulettes. Bahamut does a massive amount of upfront damage. Like a massive amount of upfront damage. And his auto attack, which he uses on people like in the general area, prioritizes targets with less HP. Like he's actually like the kill finisher. He will actually try to help you snipe kills if he can. Phoenix applies a big party-wide, note party-wide, so only your 8-man party in Frontline and, well, your 5-man party in Crystalline Conflict, a party-wide heal in the area, and then its Enkindle does more damage than Bahamut's Enkindle, but it's mainly a dot, so it doesn't actually do very much up front. And the auto attack of Phoenix does less damage, if I remember correctly. Let's see, Summon Phoenix. It's Scarlet Flame 4000, Wormwave 6000. But Scarlet Flame makes the person do half damage. Like, it's one of the most powerful defensive cooldowns in PvP in general. And Phoenix prioritizes enemies close to you. So if you stand under Phoenix, Phoenix will make sure that the melee DPS messing with you does half damage. So Phoenix is like a defensive cooldown, while Bahamut is an offensive cooldown. There's also the part that Astral Impulse has a cast time, whereas Fountain of Fire does not. So you can just run while spamming your attack if you're using Phoenix, whereas you can't if you're using Bahamut. So like, it depends on whether you're playing an offensive game or a defensive game. Like, do you need to survive or do you need to like just win more? I hope that makes sense. What it means is that when you should use Bahamut is very obvious. When you should use Phoenix is not. Like, it's really not obvious. It's very difficult actually. See, isn't there a limit break penalty for non-standard parties? For each duplicate in your party, so if you have 2 of the same job, there's a penalty. I think there might be a penalty also for having like an unusual amount of tanks or healers, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. I'm pretty sure that the main part is from having duplicate jobs. Right, next one is Alliance Raid, although I'm going to guess if that it's probably going to be Crystal Tower Roulette. Don't worry about it. It's just very common that there's at least one person who only has Crystal Tower, and that's okay. I'm guessing that we have everyone that wants to go. I feel like Pavsadi's just hanging out. So I'm just going to do a ready check. If you don't want to do Alliance Raid Roulette, you can leave if you want. But we will need a proper team for that. I will do the spin. We also didn't have ranged physical. That also is like a 1% DPS loss. White Mage! Well, I have to heal this one, guys. Finally, we rolled something that isn't a DPS. It's fine, Shiro, it's fine. I didn't take it as being aggressive about it. White Mage isn't a DPS. It isn't if you're making sure to click other buttons than stone. Just doing an extra ready check. Make sure that everyone's actually ready with their job of choice. What are other buttons? What's Cure? I'm pretty sure that my toolkit I'm pretty sure this is my toolkit. And just, that's it, right? Cure 1 isn't real. Personally, so Gazel said, I pray for getting the tower. I hate dealing with the dragon that gets dragged away. Personally, I find Labyrinth of the Ancients very annoying to deal with too. I also find World of Darkness very awkward to deal with, mainly because of the parts where you're forced to manually split up your raid. That part where, like in Labyrinth of the Ancients, you know the one, 4 on the platform. I really hate that. Because there's always someone who pulls early. Similarly, when you have to split up your raid for the portal thingies in World of Darkness, there's always like a bunch of people on the wrong platform. It just irks me. So I get why it might be annoying to get Labyrinth of the Ancients. Not only will it not hurt you, Cure 1, it will also not heal you much. Cure 1 isn't useless. There's 3 situations where it might be good. The first one is if you land in a roulette that is less than level 30. The second one, as Phil said, because of the faster cast time, but in most situations where Cure 1 might help you because of the faster cast time, I'm pretty sure you're not clicking Cure 1 because you're in such a desperate situation that you wouldn't click it on time. And the third option is if you're somehow running out of MP. In that situation, Cure 1 is cheaper. There are 3 situations. Sastasha, Copperbell Mines, and Tamdara. How about, Halatali? 3MR says, I play Resto Shaman, but only use Flame Shock. I didn't get into a guild since 2016. Only Flame Shock. Ugh. And indeed, Shiro, Labyrinth of the Ancients, it's almost always that the problems arise because someone can't wait. That warrior got really close to the mobs before he pulled anything. That was really weird. Look! I'm a DPS! Aren't I great? I'm also slide casting. Ow. I will say, I really do like how they made it so that the music in this raid, like they have this like where it switches between like the combat version and the non-combat version that makes it feel very nice. It's just a shame that they don't do that very much in the rest of the game. It's like it's very rare, I feel. And then there's also the part where they switch to like a more, I feel like, generic Alliance Raid boss fight music when you actually pull a boss. Exactly, Shiro. If you actually need to save MP, but in most situations you don't need to save MP. I wonder if I'll get targeted by anything. Well, I got targeted by something, kind of. A fire orb. I'll be helpful. I don't think that flare's going through. Seems like we have a pretty good group. Normally that flare's cast. That was like incredibly fast. Just holy mage things. Yeah, it's not a white mage, it's a holy mage. Yeah, we beat the flare. Somehow. I don't remember if I've ever had that happen before. Eh. Can you beat the curtain call? Now that is a very, very interesting question. There's someone in the Alliance raid chat going like, remember the clone mobs? Like, there are actually some people here trying to make this go fast. That's really nice. Oh yeah, that was a single target dot on, that's true. The single target dot on. For those that are a bit out of the loop on that, Dotton is a DPS loss on one target. However, for years before Endwalker, it wasn't. In Endwalker, they made it so specifically Dotton on single target is a DPS loss, intentionally, but all the time before Endwalker, so in Shadowbringers, Stormblood, I believe, even Heavensward, I'm pretty sure, Dotton was a DPS gain on single target. Not anymore. Not even a level 50. Because Raiton does more damage. Like, Raiton up front does more damage than the entirety of Dotton. It's like a common misconception. Actually, I think I've mentioned this in 2 videos a long time ago at this point, but I did mention it multiple times because I thought it was that funny. And nowadays, it's just gone over and become a little bit of a stream meme on the channel. And when we see single target Dotton, we go, single target Dotton. So try and pay attention to it. Ymir says in the ninja guides. In the old ninja guides from I believe my level 1 to 50 original ninja guide says it. Something like that. But the new one doesn't. I'm pretty sure that it's like I believe it's I believe I talk about the single target Dotton thing in my 5 ridiculous openers video. Because technically it's related to an opener. But yeah, try and pay attention to it. If you notice a Dotton go down in a single target fight, this doesn't count because that's 3 targets. But if you see Dotton go down in a single target fight, that's a single target Dotton, and that's technically a DPS loss. But it's very counterintuitive because you'd think that a 3 Mudra Jutsu would be superior, right? You'd think that. Also very true, Holly. You technically, and this is actually something that I went over in that ridiculous openers video, if I remember correctly. Technically, you can still do that. It's just that at best, oh look at that orange mage. Technically you can do it, but at best it's going to lead to like 1 second of Dotton or something to that effect. Something like that at best. Which means that for it to even matter, the tank has to perfectly move the boss on top of your Dotton, and then the Dotton had like the 3-second tick timer has to randomly happen in that very moment, in that 1 second. Because the way you would do it is you would go Futon, hide, Dotton, and then just wait until like as late as possible. But even then, it would still delay your ninjutsus very, very, very slightly. But let's just say that there's a reason why Dotton only lasts 18 seconds now instead of 24. I believe it used to last 24 seconds. Because if it lasted 24 seconds, then you could consistently, realistically go Futon, hide, Dotton, wait 20 seconds, Suiton. You could do that. So the developers prevented you from doing that. Just like how we talk, just like how you can't use Infuriate while not in combat. You can't use Etherflow while not in combat and things like that. Because if you could, then people would do it. It's like protecting the player base from optimizing the fun for themselves. I don't think we're beating Curtain Call. You know, Shiro, it's even sillier that Art of War has the same potency as Ruin 1. It gets even sillier when you realize that casting Ruin 1 delays your auto attack by 1 second, but casting Art of War does not. Which means that casting Art of War is a gain on 1 over Ruin 1 specifically. So if you've ever seen a scholar at level, I believe it's 53 or below, spamming Art of War on single target, that's actually optimal. That is actually optimized. That is the highest possible DPS they can do. Bonus points if they're also auto-attacking. Says, doesn't Art of War have more potency? No, they gain potency alongside you learning Broil, but Broil is significantly stronger, so there it stops being significant. But once you have Broil, Art of War is a gain on 2. Still a gain on 2. No one died to Curtain Call. Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. At least we didn't die. I also want to point out I've barely cast any healing. I would like to thank Gazel for carrying the healing so that I can cast Stone. Smash cut to Gazel slapping the floor. Mm-hmm. We did it, boys. Art of War's a gain on 1. Exactly. Oh, and the main tank died, it seems. You know, something that I would wish for, just for fun, I wish when he puts the ancient quagga thing down on the floor, if they're stacked, I want it to be so that it actually makes you stand even, like, you float when you stand on the areas that he puts down. I want it to be that you float higher if you're, like, standing on multiple of them. Exactly, stacking floats. And exactly, Shiro. For some reason, Arcanists, Summoners, and Scholars are buff. Like, they're pumped. They went to the gym. For some reason. Oh. Yeah. Ooh. Book smacks. Well, we can check it. So, I can't check the Art of War thing specifically, but what you can see is that we know that the potency of Art of War starts at 150 and Ruin's potency starts at 150. So the question is, when does Art of War get upgraded to 165? That is all we need to know. That is here at level 54. So fortunately, I guess, Art of War is equal to Ruin 1 until you get Broil. Like at level 54, Art of War gets a boost, which makes it, get this, stronger than Ruin 2 still. So if you're in melee range and you need to cast an instant spell, Art of War is better than Ruin 2 at this level. At max level, it's not the case anymore. But the reason why Art of War is better, specifically the reason why Art of War is better than Ruin on single target before you get Broil, is because you can auto-attack between Ruin casts. Obviously, you can do that. Like, you can see I go over to this dummy and I cast Broil. You can see my auto attacks are coming out. They're still coming, like, they're coming slower, but they're still coming. But the way that auto attacks work is that, so I'm guessing most of you know about slide casting. The slide casting window, the game doesn't actually recognize as you really casting. That means that if you cast a spell that takes 1.5 seconds to cast, then your auto attack is delayed by 1 second. It isn't reset or something. It is just the cast timer of your auto attack is just paused while you're casting. But when the slide cast begins, the game doesn't recognize you as casting anymore, which means that it resumes your auto attack timer. So every time you cast Broil, it delays your next auto attack by 1 second. That also applies for Ruin 1. Now, if you don't cast, then it does not delay your auto attack by 1 second. So the potency difference between Ruin and Art of War, when they're equal, is that every time you cast Art of War, you technically gain around 1/3 of an auto attack. Like around 1/3 of an auto attack. Now, why is it 1/3? Because the delay it says on the weapon is actually your auto attack timer. So every time it delays it by 1 second, you technically lose like 1/3 of an auto attack, right? That's the reason why Art of War is a gain on 1. Like, that's it. 1/3 of an auto attack is the potency difference. It's quite silly, isn't it? Gazel says, I didn't cast any healing spells except the downtime suckers, actually. Oh, so the situation we have is me going, I would like to thank Gazel for all the healing. And it just smash cuts to the that meme of, is it Obama giving himself a medal? Or even like, is it the Office meme of the boss giving a handshake? Ah, yes. This meme. This is me. And this is Gazel. Celine did a great job. Very true. Ah, yes. The main healer of... What, were we Group B? We had a White Mage and a Scholar, but neither of them did much. It was just Celine. Right. The next one would be normal raid. If you don't have normal raid unlocked, then of course you can't join. But if you do have normal raid unlocked, I don't care if you like. You can have just Alexander, but the key thing is that you'd need to have the roulette unlocked. You know, we're starting to be able to see the slices on this roulette. Gunbreaker! Alright, oh good, then we have 2 tanks. My man. Let me just do a ready check. I'm assuming if you say yes that you have access to normal raid roulette. Oh, my main. That also works. Oh, you didn't know that meme, Gazel? We need a... Well, I suppose we do. my mate? Man. My main man. The reason I'm specifically asking for Alexander is because I know at least one person that can't join for the higher ones, even if we did. Well, then we have a free slot. Kwasari, do you want to come? We have a space. It should work now, Kitsuneko. Hmm. Alexander's is plenty. I'm pretty sure most people have the first 2 encounters of Alexander, so that's why I'm usually asking for that one. I mean, it's almost always A1 or A2, isn't it? And technically, if we get A1, we wouldn't need 2 tanks. If we have an 8-man group, of course. Right, let me just do another ready check to make sure everyone's ready. It's always trash compactor. Good point. Do you remember when we got the trash compactor and I basically went, all right, stop. Do you want me to explain the boss before we actually pulled? That was a good day. I feel like whenever I queue... Oh. Whenever I queue for normal raid without, like low-level players or something... sorry, I'm going to do a new ready check just for good practice. So, if everyone has it, I'm actually going to guess we're getting A12. If everyone has A12, we're getting A12 now. Alright then. So I was wrong, we got A4. This is A4, right? Oh boy. Gunbreaker really feels very barren when you're only level 60, doesn't it? Exactly. Art of War's again on 2. It just feels like something is missing after every step of the Gnashing Fang combo. Wait, aren't we supposed to have, like, people getting dragged away, right? Oh. There you go. You're welcome. I reminded the boss. That is true. Gnashing Fang combo is very, very satisfying. Just the sound. Swing, 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 boom. Imagine having Heart of Light. Judgment Nissi. Oh yeah, that is the one with the hammer debuff. Piece of advice, make sure that healers are never standing on top of each other, just to be safe. Yeah, Paladin with no spells. You have Clemency, I guess. Don't know why you would use it, but technically. Ow. Imagine having Heart of Stone. We did get the hammer debuff, but no one died, so I would say pretty great success for all of us. Great success. Right, I will be right back, and then I think we're going to do one more thing. Alright, I'm back. Thank you for joining, BSR. I hope you enjoy your raid. Right. So one last roulette, I think. Good call on being prepared on time for raid, by the way, BSR. That is very good. So I'm going to do a poll on it. Just a little vote. So, time for one last roulette. Do we do MSQ roulette or do we do Frontline roulette? Which is going to be... Unsalaka Danshik Nadan. So, yeah, you choose the one you would like the most to see. What do you think would be most enjoyable? Mia says both, please. We're doing one of them. Violence is good. What we are also doing is, of course, we are doing... I'm still going to roulette it. So I'm going to be rolling the... I'm spinning the wheel again. I don't know how much success you will have with it, but you are very, very welcome to try it, BSR. If you're looking for a melee to join your static or something, you can try in the looking for group room on the Discord server. Just going to put a link to it for anyone that doesn't know. Yeah, if you can try it. I haven't heard people having success with it previously, but you're perfectly welcome to ask. Who knows? Maybe there is a melee DPS, exactly the kind of one you'd need. And then that's just an extra place. Besides, this melee is needed. That is actually a good point. That is surprising. Kasadi points out only 4 can do frontline. Yes, but we actually have a trick for that. We might not land on the same team, but the way that we make sure that we play together in frontline is I basically say an Eorzea time that I'm queuing, and then all the leader of the other team has to do to join is like choose frontline and click join when the clock strikes that specific moment. And then the probability that we land in the same match is pretty much 100%. So we would just need to make 2 4-man groups. It does seem like what we're doing is absolutely frontline. So, can you wait like 10 minutes? Not really, because like the whole point is I see we have time for 1 more roulette. Sorry, Emir. Right, so we need at least, well, we need 4, at most 4 people in each group. I just need to know who else in this area wants to do PvP. Is there a group being made? Like, I don't want to start before everyone's ready. I'm guessing that there are some people that don't want to go. If you don't want to do PvP, that's perfectly fine. If you do want to do PvP, then, you know, be in the area. Kasadi says, I am a melee main. Are you not in a static, Kasadi? I thought you were in a static. Are you not? I'm certain you were in a static. Are you just freestyling this all on your own? Ah, well, maybe you could help BSR. Let me just do a ready check in the group that I'm actually in. Don't say yes if you don't actually want to do PvP. If you don't want to join for PvP, I was a little slow on that, but say something in the party if you don't actually want to do PvP. Ymir says I'll be there in a minute. You know what, let's wait for Ymir then. I'm guessing Kitsuneko does not want to do PvP. I don't know if Kasadi wants to do PvP, but if you do, you have to say something so that we can make sure that, like, the rest of the people here that want to come along are at least in a group together. But I need you to respond so that we know. Delano, can you invite Kasadi to your party then, so that you're at least together? MR says, I never want to play PvP in Final Fantasy XIV, but when I actually do play PvP, it's the best time in my life. It's weird. It is quite weird, isn't it? Sorry for what, Emir? It's alright. You said you'd be there in a minute, so I'll wait for you. There's a big difference between going, can you wait 10 minutes? And me actually knowing whether we have 10 minutes. Like, if someone else goes, well, actually, I can't join if we wait 10 minutes, then, like, I'm basically choosing to wait, like, to prioritize someone by specifically waiting. So that's why I'm like, I can wait for you if you're basically there. But I'd want to have as many along as possible. Well, isn't that adorable? Something that I've seen, Phil, is that there's quite a massive amount of like Frontline events and like streams and things like that happening, especially in NA, that can lead to some absolutely incredibly crazy things. Like sometimes you see like 4-man parties in EU, but NA it's almost like standard. Yeah, Milo said that they were busy, but I'm guessing Kitsuneko doesn't want to join. If I remember correctly, Kitsuneko is very afraid of PvP. But that's perfectly fine. Sure. Paladin. I mean, oh, I have some materia I can extract. I didn't even realize. Yeah, Paladin isn't the worst. It's at least a job that I kind of know how to play in PvP, although I'm not that great at it in Frontline. It used to be incredibly unfair to play Paladin, especially in Unsaraka. It was overpowered, like immensely overpowered. Okay, I'm doing another ready check. Okay, so when it says 440, I will queue. Just writing it in the live chat as well, so everyone that needs to know knows. I'm clicking join when it says 440 on Eorzea time. Get ready and queue. So now we know, because the party wasn't formed instantly, we know at least for certain that there weren't enough people in the queue to like initiate a frontline. So that means when there are enough people, all 7 of us will be part of that list. We don't know if we land in the same party or the same alliance, but we will land in the same match. So that of course means that if you don't land on my team, you have the incredible opportunity of being able to work on your Kai death ratio and see if you can kill me a bunch of times. And you're of course welcome to decide whether your deaths only count if I kill you. Stream sniping commencing. It seems it doesn't want to be on your head, Milo. Shiro says, over on Ether, we got this one group of people. They tried to get in as a full 8 group of Dark Knights. Why 8? 4 should be plenty. Like, 4 should be absolutely plenty. Is it stream sniping when you just have to look for the bright pink paladin? Who knows? Let's just say that when we've done Frontline streams previously, when Sip has been leading the other party and landed on a different alliance to mine, I've actually gone out of my way to target him if I've had the opportunity to. And just remember, Sip is a Lalafell in like dark purple colors. So he's not trying to stand out. I just know what he looks like. And he isn't even streaming. So I have to actually find him. And usually I target him by randomly targeting him and going, wait a minute, that's Sip. And then just deciding not to switch off of him. They can all cast salted earth one after another. That sounds really annoying. It's like you just keep getting dragged in again and again and again and again. I know how to not get killed by it, but not how to counter it. There isn't really a counter to a Dark Knight pressing Limit Break. The only thing you can do, I think, is when they use salted earth, stun them. Or silence them. Like, just deny them the ability to use Salt and Darkness. Or Limit Break. Like, just stun them immediately. And that's usually what I've done. Is if I get dragged in by Salted Earth, I'll just stun them if I can. If I'm a job that doesn't have anything, I'll often just reflexively press guard. Because the Dark Knight is going to use Salted Earth, maybe Salt and Darkness, and then Limit Break. Oh, we are on the same team. Are we? Am I blind? Oh, there you are. There you are. No stream. Well, you can stream snipe by looking at the stream to see where I'm going. But that isn't necessarily a good thing. I don't purport to claim that I'm particularly good at PvP. Is blue team just going that way? I mean, that would make sense, but a little bit surprising that they're all going that way. Apparently they are. Nice. Oh, we got all three we went out to go get. That's pretty good. Are we getting this one too? Oh, the cross-marked player is actually doing some coordination with their Salted Earth and calling it when they're doing it. Interesting. Another one. Oh, apparently red got it. And we have no reason to stay outside of... Can we? I don't think we can save that person. I think I'm going to die with them now. I tried my best. Ah! Not worth it. Not worth it. Oh, blue team is in our base. Bonk. It's big bonk. It's really funny when you see Dark Knights that realize that they've bitten off more than they can chew, and they're just awkwardly trying to shuffle away with 10 HP. That's always funny. Oh, speaking of not funny, I don't want to run into that. The thing is, what makes Paladin a little awkward in PvP is that it's like, it's basically old school Paladin in the way that it's a sustained DPS, like extremely so. It's just full on sustained DPS. It isn't really capable of bursting anyone down, but it's very good at being extremely annoying. Like, if there's a Paladin on your back, then you're going to be taking constant, like, decent amounts of damage. It's not very impressive amounts of damage, but you're going to be taking damage constantly. Which can be very convenient for pushing enemies away. But not very good for actually threatening anyone. Well, that is very annoying. Yep. Oh, thank you. Excuse me. Just used the Dark Knight that was way ahead as a fast lane to safety. Wait a minute, there's a 4-star over there. The random bongos is that Dark Knight from earlier making a warning that they're doing the thing. We can't contest this. Thank you. Excuse me. Are we getting this? There was a fight. Yeah, that's awkward, huh? Get back here, you! I'm not finished! I have more damage! Bang! Thank you! Is this the third or the fourth time I've done that? Just escape what appears to be certain death by just jumping on some random innocent person in the area. Hmm. Can we even fight this? They got there first by a huge margin. Sandwich incoming. Oh no. Well, maybe not, oh no. We might just be able to scare them away. Well, we got it. Boonk. Stun for you. Oh, we won! Nice! We actually won. Incredible. I also did an incredibly low amount of damage. I feel like I was in combat a lot. Just paladin things, I guess. I think that was a really impressive match, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't to thank for that. I feel like I was effective, but not like winner effective. Oh yeah, Yazel is on top of the damage with Scholar. That's pretty good. Nice. Very nice. You only got one death, just like me. Very good. And then there's Gelano with 0 deaths and 33 assists. I think we did pretty good. Just in general, I think we did pretty good. I'm also very happy that we landed on the same team. Let me just check this. It seems like this actually saved the list. So how about this? I'll save what we didn't get, like on a list somewhere, and then we can, on a future stream, we can get the remaining chaos, so that we will. Well, given that there's 11 jobs left, I see there's going to be like the magic 2 or 3 jobs that don't get to participate or something. Or maybe we do. Phil says, Red had an astrologian that used LB to death 3 times, and Phil was a monk. Very true, 3MR. Like, if the other teams got like just got like sent to them like a replay of all the times I escaped them by just like doing like the Mario jump off a Goomba style escape by intervening to one of their players, I think they would be very annoyed. So many times where I just like fled through them. But if there's anything Paladin can do in PvP, it is positioning. Like if you ever played like Warrior in World of Warcraft, like especially later in the years, where they had like they could use charge twice, and they have intervene, which they can use to dash to a friend, and they have heroic leap. Like, if there is a class that has full control of where they want to be in World of Warcraft, it's usually the Warrior. The problem is that they generally just want to be in melee range. That's kind of Paladin in Frontline. You just jump around. It's not often that you want to jump around a lot, but you can. But yeah, the fun fact about Paladin, actually, is that if you remember, exactly, Warrior being a rogue, yeah, exactly. But if you remember, back when the PvP rework was new in Final Fantasy XIV, Paladin, there was a discovered strategy specifically in Unsalaka, a little bit in Seal Rock, but particularly in Unsalaka, that involved a Paladin using Limit Break and one other player on their team. It doesn't require the other player to be anything specific, but basically, before it was, there was actually a rework to how PvP works, like a mild adjustment to interactions, specifically to counteract this broken combo. So the way that the capture point modes work, so Seal Rock and Unsalaka, where there's like a spot that you have to like interact with for, I believe it's 5 or 10 seconds, without being attacked. Now, the important keyword here is attacked, because it used to be without taking damage. And the reason why it worked like that, why this gimmick worked, is that Paladin has Guardian and Phalanx. So Phalanx makes the Paladin invulnerable for 10 seconds. And Guardian is cover. Like, it's straight up, it's cover. It just makes all damage on another player that is within a certain range of you redirect their damage to you. You saw me use it on some people throughout the Frontline. You may notice I specifically ran with Gazel to like ferry them away from the battle near the end. When we got sandwiched a little bit. The thing is that the way Guardian works is that it redirects the damage wholesale to the Paladin, which means that the Paladin could use, they could use Guard to reduce the damage they take by 90%. And if they use Guardian on someone and then Guard, then they're taking the damage they themselves take and the damage the other person take. But both of them are reduced by 90%. And the Paladin is still, it's just eating all the damage that is redirected to them, so they can just make it so that someone else just has free reign to strike back with no worry, because the Paladin can basically share its guard with someone else. Now, that isn't actually broken, apparently. Apparently it's not broken. Because that's how the interaction actually works. If you use Phalanx so that the Paladin is actually invulnerable and cannot take damage, they can still use Guardian to redirect damage to from someone else, meaning that the Paladin can actually share their invulnerability with one other person of their choosing. That sounds a little broken. Again, that's how the game works. Paladin is balanced around this interaction. What was broken and what was reworked is, in Unsalaka, the way you deal with someone taking a node is that you kill them, or at least attack them. The argument, because the thing is, it wasn't actually cheating to use this interaction. If a Paladin used Guardian on another player, then you could not stop that other player from taking the node, because that player wasn't taking damage, the Paladin was. All of your damage got redirected to the Paladin, so you couldn't stop the other player. The reason why it wasn't considered cheating is because the intended counteract, what you're supposed to do about it is just kill the Paladin. Like, obviously you just kill the Paladin and then you kill the person, right? But the Paladin can be invulnerable for the full duration of a node capture. Like, the full thing. And they don't even need to be invulnerable for the full thing. It's very difficult to kill someone through guard in 5 seconds. So the problem was that the Paladin was nearly impossible to kill in the time frame where node could be taken. So while sorry, let me move that over here. The reason why it was considered a little broken was because while the intended counterplay was just kill the Paladin Lamau, you couldn't really do that. Like, that wasn't really an option. Like, it was about as good as Like, you can't kill a Dark Knight while their limit break is going. Like, you can't. It got countered pretty hard by knockbacks. That's true, that could have worked. I believe the way that the Paladins worked around it was that they would use Guardian and Limit Break and Guard, because Guard makes you immune to knockbacks. But there are ways to go about it. Like, exactly, you could just kick the Paladin away if they're using Phalanx. You just go away, push them away, and that could work. But it was so difficult to deal with and required such a specific response that, like, let me put it like this. There are only so many knockbacks and drag effects in PvP, even though the amount of them you see in Frontline would suggest otherwise. You could be on an alliance that does not have the counterplay to stop the Paladin. And Paladin being able to, as a limit break, allow another player to steal a node, and the only counterplay to that is just use your limit break. That's not very fair, is it? Like, that leads to a very stale meta, where everyone just has to sit on their limit break in case the Paladin tries to do the thing. So the way that this was fixed is, if you are attacked, doesn't matter whether the attack actually connects or not. If an attack is sent your direction and you're trying to take a node, you will be stopped. If an attack is sent at you, even if it doesn't do any damage, it still counts as you being stopped. Even if the Guardian effect redirects the damage to the Paladin, so technically damage numbers might not even appear for you, it counts and you get hit, because otherwise it would be too overpowered. Fel says, well, invuln cover was a thing. I mained Reaper specifically to stop them. And you know what the most interesting thing about that is? I believe Reaper has one of the fastest charging limit breaks in PvP. I believe Plentiful Harvest doubles the speed at which your limit gauge charges, which means that it just cuts 15 seconds off the limit break charge rate, or charge time. It's 40 seconds with Plentiful Harvest. Really? So it's like quadrupling your limit break charge rate, are you sure? Because it says here that it's 75 seconds, or maybe they changed it since you did it. But yeah, the point is that Reaper has one of the fastest charging limit breaks in PvP. So if you need a limit break to counter Paladin, Reaper would, like, if Reaper's limit break is sufficient, and it is, then that would actually be the hard counter. But just think about this for a moment. This was a strategy that required a Reaper to counter. That's not very fun, is it? Especially, like, I'm just saying that right now what we're seeing instead is that everyone is gradually turning into Dark Knights in Frontline, because Dark Knight is very difficult to play against. But at least there are other jobs being present. Like, I have seen 4 Dark Knights just roll up together and just limit break. Reaper doesn't really counter Paladin. No, I'm not saying Reaper counters Paladin. I'm saying when guard cover in Unsalakaya was meta, the way that Reaper could counter it is, I believe, the Reaper limit break could fear away the person trying to capture through the Paladin Guardian. And also you could just scare the Paladin away so cover stopped working. It's like, it didn't counter Paladin, it specifically countered a cheese gimmick strat that, by the way, no longer works. Don't try it, because it doesn't work. But it countered the specific gimmick somewhat effectively. I suppose, Phil, that the argument for why Reaper might be really good at dealing with with a Dark Knight might be a similar reason, because the Dark Knight gimmick is dragging in people and clicking Limit Break. But Dark Knight's Limit Break has a much longer charge time than Reaper, so if the Reaper really wants to ruin a Dark Knight's day, Reaper can just sit on their Limit Break, and whenever the Dark Knight uses Salted Earth, Reaper just goes, no, and Limit Breaks back, so that the Dark Knight, instead of dragging everyone in and then doing a big burst, just runs like a little girl. And because the Limit Break for Reaper charges so fast, you could do that. Like, I think Reaper might have the ability to ruin a lot of combos. The thing is that Reaper's really difficult to play in PvP as far as I know, and it's not super popular in PvP. So even if it can do that, it's unlikely we'll see it happen. Warrior could also guard break and then yank the paladin away. That could also work. The thing that makes it really complicated is that there's a lot of things that can go wrong. If the paladin was crowd controlled by anything, meaning, and it's almost guaranteed the paladin would be, so think, for example, you see someone trying to take the node. The paladin is blocking for them while they're there, right? You will probably try to stun or nuke the person taking the node. The paladin takes the stun for them and presses Purify. Now they're immune for 5 seconds. Warrior goes up, uses Limit Break, and tries to yank the paladin away, but the paladin is immune to knockback effects because they use Purify. So it can be, like, the reason why it was such a massive issue that Paladin had this weird gimmick they could use was specifically because there were so many things that had to go right for you to counter it. But on the other hand, the Paladin and whoever they were teaming with didn't need to do very much to do it. It was pretty easy to perform the gimmick itself. And it's not very fun if the meta is that the offensive strategy is trivial to perform and the defense against it is brutally difficult. That's why they changed it. It wouldn't surprise me if we're going to see nerfs or adjustments to the jobs that are like wreaking havoc on Frontline right now. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they increase the charge time on Dark Knight's Limit Break, for example, in Frontline. Because the thing is, Dark Knight isn't broken in Crystalline Conflict. It's just that its specific toolkit is a little overpowered for certain things in Frontline. So we might see adjustments like that for Frontline, because I don't think they want everyone to be playing Dark Knight. Like, the reason why Paladin had this fix was ultimately what you're going to see in Unsalakaya, if they left it as is that you might actually see like a full 24 alliance of 24 Paladins. If one Paladin can empower a different Paladin, like a different anything, to steal a node with no contest, then 24 Paladins can do it any moment they want. They can literally have 4 pairs of Paladins, like, just each Paladin, like 4 Paladins cover 4 other Paladins, and those Paladins all go up to the node. It's going to be very hard to disarm each pair in those few seconds. So, like, that is the ultimate death of Unsalakaya Frontline, right? And like that would be the end game ultimately, that everyone would be playing Paladin there, when you forget that part of the fun of Frontline is actually... Now, you might need to sit down for this if you aren't already, but the important part of having fun is actually having fun. I know, shocking revelation. Yeah, I suppose Dark Knight is good in crystalline conflict. I don't think there's any jobs that are like specifically bad in crystalline conflict. Like, sure, there are jobs that are slightly worse, but and some that are slightly better. But what usually happens in a game mode like that is that, specifically because the game mode is very random, like crystalline conflict ranked versus tournament, not the same. Crystalline conflict ranked is like pretty chaotic. So what can happen is that the jobs that are less popular because they're bad means that people are less likely to know how to play against them. Like, for example, what I remember from season 1 of Crystalline Conflict was that no one played Gunbreaker and no one played Reaper, except apparently the top ranked person for some time. But because no one played them, when you met one, they were usually really good. And you had no idea what they were going to do because you had never fought one. RV says, just ignore them, Paladin doesn't do any damage. I mean, they don't do any burst damage. I went over this before. Like, Paladin's big advantage is that they can do very good sustained damage. That's not very threatening. Like, if you ignore the Paladin, they'll gradually wear you down and you run out of MP if you just keep ignoring them. But generally, that's what the Paladin wants to do. Like, if you just let it smack you around because you're ignoring it, then if the Paladin's actually good, then they'll play around that and then make sure that they're harassing the person they want to die. And eventually that person has to leave the field to heal or elixir. And if the Paladin isn't stopped, if everyone's ignoring the Paladin, then the Paladin is just chasing the Black Mage around for the entire match. That's going to be very annoying, right? But the thing is that the Paladin is a lot more about defending. Like, it's actually a tank in PvP because it's capable of making sure everyone heals more with Confiteor, and it's able to defend your squishiest party member. But in actual attacking, what Paladin does is primarily just be extremely annoying. And that's true, Shiro. In Crystalline Conflict, Biolysis is mostly like, it's part of giving your team an advantage, but it alone doesn't do much. Also, hey, Anolana, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, it's complicated. My point is that there isn't necessarily a job that is bad in Crystalline Conflict, ranked, or casual for that matter. It's a different story when it's tournament, because then you can do some really disgusting things. But when it's ranked and the groups are mostly random, most of the jobs are somewhat even. Like, I remember people were like, this job is really bad. Then when you saw a player that actually played it, they played really well. The problem is that no one knew how to play against it. We remember specifically the season 1 story of everyone saying that Black Mage was useless and terrible. It got massive buffs, and that was then served with Yoshi P going, I played Black Mage just fine before the buffs. You all suck. He didn't say it like that, but he said the most polite version of that. And that's why they nerfed Black Mage later down the line again, to drag it back down a peg. Because Black Mage was fine. It was just no one knew how to play Black Mage, so everyone said it was bad. Exactly, Yoshi P saying skill issues are running theme. Very true. That's the thing, if you say a job is bad in, for example, Crystalline Conflict, pretty good chance that it's also just no one, you've not seen anyone that's actually good at the job. So it's complicated. And another thing that I noticed, which was also very funny, was that I believe they shared the win rates of of all the jobs in the first Crystalline Conflict season, and what you noticed is that all of the jobs that people said were great, or the best, had bad win rates, because all of the bad players were playing them and losing. Meanwhile, the jobs that people said weren't good, or didn't talk about, had good win rates, because only the people that were dedicated to the jobs played them. I can't remember if it was that bad, Phil, but I do remember that the jobs that were really popular had below 50% win rates, and the jobs that people said were fine or weren't good. Well, let's see. The jobs they said were bad or were not good. No. Reset. The jobs they said were great, that the community said were extremely good and easy to play, had bad win rates, whereas the jobs that were considered terrible or bad or not like amazing had good win rates because people weren't playing them. Why would you play Sage when you could play White Mage and White Mage is overpowered? Why play Black Mage, which is bad, when you could play Red Mage, which was overpowered? I recall people said were pretty overpowered. Why play Paladin when you could play Warrior and just Lamau Primal Rend and win every team fight? And the thing is, what you discovered as you got to the higher ranks, and I experienced that in Season 1, I got to Crystal rank in Season 1. You can see, have this. I don't know if they said Red Mage was overpowered, but some people really didn't like it because it had disgustingly high burst. But in Season 1, what I noticed was that as you got to the higher ranks, people started countering these things. For example, warriors that still did the Lamau Primal Rend right into the enemy team right at the start started just getting stomped by it because, well, the enemy team expects it. The Red Mage is just dashing into the enemy team and doing melee combo while in Black Shift just gets stomped because the enemy team expects it and just switches to the squishy who's now in melee range. Things like that. Like these brain dead Lamau combos stopped working because you had to think a little bit. And you had to plan a little bit. But you're right, RV. Ultimately, what is good or bad is up to the PvPers, I suppose. But I'm just saying, and I'm just saying this for everyone in the crowd, not even the top Savage Raiders know what's best in Savage Raid necessarily. They're very good at tossing something aside that is perfectly fine because everyone is a little good at being a little over-exaggerating when they say something is bad or something is good. Being slightly worse than perfect isn't meaning that you're bad. But yeah, there's going to be PvE jobs that are better in PvP than others. But what I'm trying to say is that unless you can objectively prove that a job is actually just bad, and I don't think we can do that very easily, then it's very difficult to determine whether something is bad. PvE or PvP. In PvE, it's usually very easy because people say, well, it's doing less DPS than this job. But when you say something is bad in that regard, it's usually doing 1% less DPS than this other job. So that's why I'm a little questioning when someone says something is bad, whether it's PvE or PvP. I feel like the balance team is pretty good about PvP stuff these days. So it would surprise me if there's a job that was actually straight up bad in PvP. Because usually those get buffs. .3MR says, it's like people say Mistweaver is the best healer because of stats, but only like 2 people play it. that's true is that you need the statistics, how many people are actually playing, as well as are they winning or not. Like, are they playing really well, and how many are there? This was also the interesting aspect of those win rates on the jobs that I talked about earlier with the season, and with the season 1 win rates. Is that the jobs that had really good win rates typically had a significantly lower play rate. Like, there was a lot less people actually playing them. But yeah, like, if you're comparing data where you have very little data for one job, whereas on another job you have very much data, then it can be skewed. This is also something that we sometimes talk about with FF logs, is that if you have the first thing is that the people that actually log their runs on FF logs tend to be slightly better than average. Slightly better. So that means that the exact average from FF logs is going to be skewed upwards for that. The other thing is that the less players that are playing a job, the more likely it is that it's skewed upwards, because only the better players of the job is playing it. And Olana says, is the WoW monk class population that far behind the others though? I don't know if it is now, but I remember that even back in Legion, monk was the least popular class, and this is like, it's similar to the knock-on effect I talked about with Alliance and Horde versus like Data Center in Party Finder that I talked about earlier. Because there was a preference for something when it was new, that has perpetuated. Monk was not very good at launch of Mr. Pandaria, so people weren't very incentivized to make and level monks. And then when monks became good, people had already decided to main something else. And then that kind of just stuck. So you'd need monks to become absolutely incredibly overpowered to beat it. I don't know if monks have, like, if it has evened out nowadays, but I do remember that in Legion, monk was by far the least popular class. Like, it was less than half of the second to last place. RV says, I think it's very easy to recognize strong classes in PvP, but it seems like you're using metrics and objective factors to measure it, which is the wrong way to approach job balance. I'm not doing that. I'm literally saying you can observe that the jobs that people say are bad seems to be getting higher win rates because only the people that are dedicated to them are playing them, which means that the jobs that are potentially actually really good have their win rates lower than expected because the bad players are dragging it down. What we're getting at here is that win rates might not be the best metric to decide whether something is good or not. It feels like you're trying to say that I'm saying something which I'm not. I also think that your perspective that it's easy to prove only if you understand how to play, not really. If you know how to play PvP, doesn't mean that you know what is good or not. It's like saying, I have completed an ultimate, therefore I know what the best tank in the game is. Ignoring the fact that I might have, like, that maybe the player saying that completed the ultimate on a DPS. What I'm saying is that it's complicated, so therefore, just because you know how to play PvP doesn't mean you know what jobs are good or bad. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know either. That's why I'm saying I don't think there's any particularly bad jobs in PvP. Phil says, I think the Overwatch community looks at pick rates rather than win rates. And see, that isn't a particularly good metric either. Anyway, the point is that it can be difficult to measure things objectively, whether it's PvE or PvP. I actually made a video about this subject a long time ago, on PvE specifically. And that was back when people were specifically singling out, I believe it was Machinist, Warrior, and Paladin in the second raid tier. And the point I was making in that video was that the reason why these jobs were actually considered bad in P8S specifically, particularly when it was slightly overtuned right at the start, was because some jobs in Final Fantasy XIV have tools that are not actually helpful in the current, like, metagame, you could say. Nowadays, Machinist has been buffed incredibly since that time, but the reason why Machinist wasn't particularly amazing in Savage content was because it suffered from ranged attacks, which is a lot less prevalent now. But it also suffered from the fact that its main selling point is that it has an incredibly good upfront, like front-loaded burst. But that doesn't help anyone in Savage, where you need like sustained damage and massive bursts and burst windows and stuff like that. So if your burst window isn't big enough, then it doesn't matter, no one cares. Which is the reason why Machinist, for example, could be at the time, remember, not now, back then, Machinist was considered bad. Even though it's really good at other content. It's really good in dungeons. It was incredibly good at, like, just deleting trash packs and dungeons. No one cares about your AoE burst. It's really good at doing Palace of the Dead or Heaven on High, but that's because your upfront burst is very helpful when you have to solo a mob, which isn't very helpful in Savage raiding. The same thing was true for Warrior and Paladin. They had slightly, well, have slightly better defensive cooldowns than Gunbreaker and Dark Knight, but you have 8 players. If you're lacking in defensive cooldowns, someone else has one. So having a slight advantage in defensive cooldowns, no one really cares. Who does the most damage? Who does the most damage? It didn't help that I believe P8S was heavily skewed towards magic damage, and Dark Knight has a particular advantage against magic damage. It's a type of power creep, you could say, yeah. Because the thing is, this wasn't always a problem. What do you give a job that already has everything? Like, at this point, most jobs have a defensive cooldown of some sort to share with the raid. Like, what? Wasn't it? Yeah. Red Mage got a raid defensive cooldown in Endwalker. Just go ahead, take that. Now, apparently that wasn't enough, because as Fel said, Red Mage was singled out too. Except Black Mage. Well, they have Adel. So everyone in a raid team nowadays, everyone, even the samurai, has a defensive cooldown. Even the Dragoon has a defensive cooldown. And this is basically it's just like a result of that is that it affects tenacity and it affects the value of tank defensive cooldowns. If you have enough defensive cooldowns spread across your raid that your tank doesn't need to do all the heavy lifting themselves, then who cares whether your tank has the best defensives, right? It's actually very interesting with that 3MR, because something that let me actually check that real quick. I'm pretty sure that it isn't a problem anymore. I remember. Thank you for joining, Rust. See you very soon and have a good evening. I remember right around like the early days of this raid tier, so P9S to P12S, that Dark Knight mains were in shambles because they weren't the highest damage tank anymore. Allegedly. The argument was that they were posing is our defensive cooldowns aren't the best and our damage isn't the best, so what reason do you have to play Dark Knight? That's weird. There's 2 Dark Knights here. Why would they use such a terrible tank with bad damage? Why would they use that? Ignore that. Why would they use a tank that is like bottom feeder damage dealing as a tank? Why would they do that? Like, they don't know anything, clearly. /S. Strange. Weird. Emir says Paladin has great burst damage, right? I believe Paladin has like okay burst in PvE. It's not like particularly incredible. There's a reason why people tend to fluctuate towards Dark Knight and Gunbreaker for burst, because they have slightly better burst. I think Paladin has like slightly lower burst than the other tanks, but its sustained damage is slightly better like before. But it's not as bad as it used to be. It's not as bad as it used to be. I think that's the best I can say on that, is that it's not as bad as it used to be. Its burst is fine compared to the other tanks. I believe Paladin might have the weakest burst consistently. The thing is that Paladin has a very impressive burst when it's lucky. I believe Paladin, when it is lucky, has the capacity to burst harder than a warrior. Simply because warrior depends on slightly lower damage numbers, but it's basically guaranteed to do maximum damage most of the time with its burst. Paladin doesn't have that. So it relies on being lucky. 3MR, did you write a typo in that message? Paladin being the worst tank is better than being... Oh, Paladin being the worst tank is better than being the worst job. Well, what exactly... Let me just check here. Yeah. It is complicated. It is complicated, but yeah, Paladin used to be a lot worse. There's also the thing that Paladin used to be a lot harder to play. So nowadays... it's easier to play, so so the thing is, before the Paladin rework, there were two reasons why people didn't play Paladin. The first one being that it wasn't the best, and the second one being that it was really hard to play Paladin well. Nowadays, Paladin is, I would say it's pretty easy to play. It's not like trivial to play, but it's pretty easy to play because of how its burst is like almost like a package that you just unload and then you just use fill or whatever you have. Like there's very little you can optimize in that. So now it's pretty easy to play, so you at least have only one reason to not choose to play it, and it has something to do with performance. And that is something that can be fixed. Like, that is something that it can be buffed to be good again. Like, if it's really hard to play, it's really hard to get data on the job, because only the most dedicated players who are going to play it regardless will be playing it. Phil says it's hard to call any job the worst right now, but Paladins would fight me on that. Why would the Paladins fight you on that? Isn't it to their advantage to say, yeah, that's true, it's very hard to call any particular job the worst. But the thing is, and we've talked about this many times, when people say that something is the worst, they typically don't see this. Right? And this is like the DPS jobs. I'll get to the tanks and healers. They don't see this. They see this. Actually, they don't even see that. Like, they see just this part. Like, they don't see the graphs and all that showing that the power difference is actually pretty small. They don't see that. They just see the ranking. They don't see... this. They don't see that the median performance between the four tanks is 60, 59, 58, and 58. They see Gunbreakers better than Warriors, better than Dark Knight, is better than Paladin. That's what they see. Generally, the population that says this job is bad, they see Paladin at the bottom and call it a day. They see Astrologian at the bottom and call it a day. And then when you show them this, they get very confused. Like they see this and they get very confused because Astrologian was supposed to be the worst, right? And that's because what is actually best depends on a lot of things. And this is also something we talked about earlier. What is worst for you can depend on a few things. Like, even if the best like, if you're in a static, your mage player is choosing to play black mage because they see this. But they're playing really poorly because they're bad at Black Mage. But they're really good at Summoner, so when they play Summoner they do more damage. It's almost like the median performance difference of around 3.5% means that if you're actually good at a job, you're going to perform better. Even if the other job has a higher, like, maximum performance. And that applies to all roles. There's also the part that if you don't actually like playing a job, you're not going to get good at it. Because you don't enjoy practicing it. OTP? Yeah, exactly, Emir. Yeah, the thing is that, and this is actually also an interesting perspective, is that Black Mage is the least popular mage. Oh yeah, One Trick Pony, that's true. I wasn't sure because it has multiple, it's an acronym for multiple things. But yeah, that is true. Most Black Mage mains aren't exactly the kind of players who have a Summoner pocket or a Red Mage pocket secondary, just in case a fight is too hard. And this is actually very comparable to that discussion about the win rates of PvP jobs. We will never be sure, we will never be 100% certain if this is actually a reasonable graph. We will never be sure if this is a reasonable graph. Summoner might on average be a lot better, like the average of good summoners might be up here. The average of bad black mages might be down here. But given that we're working with actual data here, and there's a lot of summoners and significantly less black mages, it's going to be hard to determine. So that's why, even when we have this data, that we can't even be sure we can trust it. Exactly, Phil. That is also the kind of point I was trying to make, is that if Summoner was less popular, its median might increase, mainly within this like thick bar, I'd wager, but it would be closer to the top rather than the bottom. Similarly, if Black Mage was more popular, then its median would probably drop, because that's generally how these things go. A job that is more popular will have more bad players. It will also have more good players, potentially, but the thing is that if a job is good, then good players will play it. And even if a job is bad, good players that like it will still play it. Bad players that like it might still play it. But you're not going to see any good players play a bad job just for the sake of playing it. Similar to how there's a very good chance that Black Mage is very concentrated of like One Trick Pony or like pure Black Mage mains, because Black Mage is so hard to get good at that most players will just abandon it. Right? Now, that is a very long discussion after roulettes. We got everything done. I'll write down the list of jobs we didn't get to play on this stream, so that we have the remainder for a future chaos stream, so to speak. So we can cover, like, try everything in that way. It's going to be very fun to see what job becomes the last one. Now, we had a lot of fun with all sorts of jobs. And if you did enjoy the people that you saw on this stream, and you would like to see more of them, there is a community Discord server that you can join, where you will find, well, you'll find me and all sorts of other people from the stream chat, and also people not in the stream chat. You will also find the weekly schedule, where you can see the videos that I put out, what is coming out in the next week or so. You'll see what streams are coming out. There's also an announcement room where you can see when I post a new video, when I plan a new stream, or whatever it is, which allows you to get the fastest response on when something is planned. Like, for example, I usually post it first there when I plan a stream, when I post a video. It usually comes out faster than the YouTube bell, although that one also helps. You can also choose a role on the server, which allows you to get, like, which makes me tag you whenever that I post something, if you feel like you're scared of missing when I'm doing something. And if you did enjoy the stream, it would help me very much if you leave a like on the stream itself and the YouTube stuff. I think it's down there. Because then it lets YouTube know that it was actually an enjoyable stream. And I do hope you did enjoy it. So thank you in advance. I don't have anything else, so let me just read the final comments. Bundy says, depending on how long the fight is, it's DPS efficient to literally disconnect for 2 minutes, then come back on Black Mage, then play Red Mage to an equal skill level. I think that is a little hyperbolic, given that Red Mage isn't that far behind. But I'm guessing that the reason why you're saying disconnect for 2 minutes is because there's some memes with how strong Black Mage can be. And Zach, if you enjoy Red Mage, it's not a bad one to start with. It has a very high skill ceiling without being too complicated at the floor, and has a lot of utility, which, if you're not used to playing support jobs, you'll probably like having an easy access to raise, some healing if your group needs it, so on and so forth. Now, with that said, I hope you had enjoyed the stream. So, good evening, good night, good morning, afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye!